It's alright. If your hard drive fails again and you lose the recording, we'll just make you re-record like all of your vocals on it.
Everybody's, so I have to do accents and characters and everything.
That would be amazing.
I don't want to be the geezer that's lost his audio twice.
Yeah, but it's fine. You're like our canary down the mine shaft. So like, if any of us lose audio now, it's like, well, Dave did it twice.
I'm not as bad as that twat. Fat Bono's lost his twice.
Welcome, Funketeers, to the latest episode of the Cacophony Sessions. Today, we'll be curating our own playlist of songs we think would be found on the Walkman of everyone's favourite fictional psychopath, Patrick Bateman. As always, I'll be your host for this episode, which is the third episode of Season 2, if you're keeping score. We haven't had the chance to properly delve into the 80s yet, so I'm excited for this one. My name's Dan, and if you've been wondering where we've been, I've had to return some videotapes. Also placing their off-white business cards on the table of dialogue this evening will be Martyn.
Hi, there is an idea of a Martyn lay, but this introduction has meant nothing.
Dave.
Do you like Phil Collins?
Tom.
When people say, "Can I borrow your pen?" I want to say, absolutely not. Get your own pen. This is mine.
David Mitchell quote.
Yeah, it is, of course.
Yeah.
I'm carrying on the thing.
I got it.
But
I'm
nearly
with you. I
Bateman-esque.
still listen to the running jokes.
They're very similar characters.
And Alex.
Is your name Winter? Because you'll be coming soon.
Oh.
Still on with the Tinders.
Oh, it doesn't even work because it's spring.
Well, it was between that or you're so hot my zipper is falling for you.
Which was 9 million times better.
It probably was, actually.
We're going to be talking about horrific crimes committed by a fictional psychopath.
In his mind.
Already...
It is an old film. I think we're allowed
Well,
spoilers.
actually, is it a spoiler? Is it a spoiler? Because is it really in his... Anyway, we'll get on to that later, I'm sure. I really, really, really am filled with dread asking this question. But what have we been up to, guys? Shall we go to Martyn first?
Hi,
Just don't have to say hi every time you speak. That's going to get really annoying to edit, all right?
Hi.
just leave it in, man. Okay.
No, I think leave it in. Every time he says hi, we all say hi back. Perfect.
Hi.
Hi, Martyn.
Hello, Martyn.
So, I've been listening to a late 80s, early 90s new wave band. Their early stuff was not artsy enough for my taste. They're called My Bloody Valentine, and which is quite appropriate because on my last Valentine's date, the date got quite bloody. But anyway, all of their stuff has been streaming last week. They put all of their stuff on Spotify, and they've teased the idea they might be recording a couple of albums, which if you're a fan of MBV, you know that that's probably going to come out in 2025. But I'm pretty excited about that. I think it's really great that they're on streaming services, even though they sound better on a Sony tape Walkman. But they, they may get to a wider audience, and people might start realizing the importance of the band from a historical perspective. So they're going to come up on people's Spotify playlists. So you'll get people listening to modern shoegazy stuff, and it'll be like recommended. MBV Love List. They'll listen to it once, they'll go, what the fuck was that? They'll listen to it twice and go, this is my new favourite band. So I've actually been revisiting a lot of MBV.
Al disagrees with you.
Yeah, I see Al's face.
I fucking don't like that band.
Well, I mean, they are extremely important, and they are genius, and they did change the landscape of guitar music forever in a way that Hendrix did in the 60s, and there's not many bands that can say that. But yeah, that's what I've been doing, listening to them a lot. So yeah, that's me, man.
Tom, what have you been up to?
The first thing I've been doing is I discovered that the PlayStation Vita store is being closed in August. So
it is.
So yeah. Despite the fact that I've got your PS4 Pro, deliberately with the idea of sitting down and playing Persona 5 Royal, because I've been meaning to do that for ages. No, I'm downloading and playing all of the highly rated Vita games before they disappear. But I have been, on a musical note, I have been keeping up with what's going on. So I've been trying to listen to at least like 5 new albums a week. This week was really tough because so many albums came out on Thursday and Friday this week. It's insane. I've got a playlist going that I've shared with you guys. I added 30 tracks because I listened to like at least half of the album of 30 different bands on Thursday and Friday. And there's some absolute crap. I listened to more than that, but there's 30 good ones came out. Like, just going through it, there's obviously Godspeed You Black Emperor released an album. Now, the thing is, I want to get really gushy about how good the new Godspeed You Black Emperor album is, and I probably could, but it is just another Godspeed You Black Emperor album. If you like the band, you'll love it. If you don't like the band, this probably won't win you over. That said, it's fucking great. Go and buy it. But then Las Vegas released a new album.
Oh, really? Las Vegas, man. What a good band.
Drums released a really 80s synth poppy type album. Everson Poe released, who's a solo artist, released this sort of post-metal album that deals with religious themes really, really well. Then there's like cheesy indie pop, like Hit Like a Girl with some great choruses in there. And then there's some like mathy indie from a band called Tautologic that I really liked. Foxes released a new album. Death from Above 1979 released a new album. I think that was last week. But yeah, some absolutely amazing stuff.
Is there a band called Matchbox 1979?
No, you're thinking Matchbox 2020.
No, it's just Matchbox 20.
Matchbox 20 with Rob Thomas.
Yeah. That said, my albums of the year are still Really From and Black Country New Road. Really From is an album you guys really should check out, actually. It deals with...
My only criticism for everything that you've listed there is there seems to be new albums from mainly bands from the early 2000s.
Most of those aren't new bands from the early 2000s. Like Foxes aren't Really From, Everson Poe.
Oh, I thought you were abbreviating the Fleet.
Oh, no. Foxes, as in Foxes, the female solo artist.
Dave, what have you been doing?
Well, as you know, last week my record from the last podcast catastrophically failed. So the majority of the week I've been taking computers to bits.
We don't talk about the last episode.
I think we could talk about the last episode. I think there's nothing wrong with acknowledging that we've had faults and issues in the past.
The last episode may make an appearance. We don't know yet.
We're hoping to either recover it via deep file searches or me just re-recording it on Martyn's bleed track. But
oh God, can you please can you try and act it out? You're going to sound like a really bad actor in it. It's gonna be
yeah, I know, it's going to be... Well, that's very interesting, Thomas.
Go on, Tom.
We will be live streaming you recording and lip syncing your original performance.
It'd be like a bad anime dub. It's going to be great.
Yeah.
And I've been trying to bring back Al's microphone from life. So I've been kind of deep in soldering irons and reinstalling software and being fucking annoying. But I have put on the Sign of the Times Super Deluxe from the Vaults records in the background, so that'd be nice. I've been listening to that, and when I've been in the van delivering, I've put on a little bit of Six music and I've played some Spotify stuff. So I've kept my feet in the water, but mainly I've been plagued with stupid hardware and software problems, unfortunately.
Al, what have you been doing?
Oh, I was actually dreading you asking me this because of them fuck all. I restarted watching Shameless on Netflix. It's quite a good series.
It is a good series.
It is good.
Frank's a lad.
Yeah, almost finished season 1, so I'm quite enjoying it. Yeah, exactly. Music-wise, I haven't really listened to anything new. I've just been listening to just the music I already kind of like. So I'm going to
set your drum kit back up, didn't you?
Well, yeah, but that's been set up for a while now. But my double bass pedal, which I finally got around to resetting up, so I haven't played it in years. I'm quite bad at it again now. But a screw's gone on the one of the pedals, so now I've got to get a new screw. So, yeah, drumming-wise, it's not going too well. I'm not sure if I mentioned it before, but I listened to a new Rammstein album, which I'm not a massive fan. I've listened to them since, was it Sonne, back in like 2001 or something. But yeah, new Rammstein album's really good if anyone wants to listen to it. It's pretty catchy. I'm quite enjoying that. Listened to a lot of Code in Cambria. I've listened to a lot of Creeper, if anyone's ever heard them. They played in Plymouth a while back, kind of like a pop-punk band. I like them because if there's anything that's got double-time drumming, Bad Religion style, over any punk music, I'm pretty much sold on it. So, yeah, I listened to a lot of that. But yeah, that's kind of it, really. Nothing special to report. I'm not doing a Tom and listening to 5 new albums a week. I'm still
I don't think
waiting
anyone's
for a
doing
Gojira
a Tom
album.
and listen to 5 albums a week apart from Tom.
No.
No, that's mental shit. I'm in a fucking van 12 hours a day and I ain't got time for that.
Ain't nobody got time for that.
There's so much good stuff coming out, man. This is probably the best year for music since about 2009. Like, I haven't liked any year as much as this year. Like, there's so much good stuff coming out. Some of it, I think, has been delayed because of COVID, and there's a lot of singer-songwriters who've been working on stuff and releasing really good stuff. I think
this year is going to be blasted music-wise because a lot of people have held back last year. So if it keeps going the way it's going this year of like restrictions being lifted and people being let to do shit, then yeah, we're going to get fucking slammed.
I'm really struggling to keep up already, and we're only in April. Like, it's so good.
I'm still waiting for the new Gojira album. They've released 2 singles from it. The first one I really liked. The second one I thought was kind of averagey. So I'm thinking the album, I'm not sure what to think when it comes out. But yeah, we'll see how it goes. But yeah, other than that, I don't know why I'm on a music podcast, honestly.
Neither do we.
Music.
Yeah, here you are.
I listen to the music I like, and then I'm here just to shit on music I don't like. Just be a prick.
We've been over this. You're the everyman, Al.
Yeah. I'm the Joe Average team in dodgeball.
They win in the end.
They do. And I shall win too.
But there's no competition tonight, though.
No.
We have selected a playlist from 5 songs each. And we've put some restrictions on what qualifies and what doesn't. So in our playlist tonight, we won't be covering anything that's mentioned in the book or featured on the original soundtrack to the movie in 2000. We're looking specifically at songs from 85 to 88. And, well, American Psycho, I've read the book. It's a 1991 novel by Bret Easton Ellis. It's one of my favourite books. It is an exceptional novel, and the visceral quality of the imagery in it is unparalleled in a lot of novels that have come afterwards, certainly. The film is surprisingly good, featuring a young Christian Bale, and it was in that era of slasher flicks like Scream, I Know What You Did Last Summer, those kind of movies. So you would expect them to go down a more impervious villain slasher movie kind of direction with the way in which they made the movie, but they didn't. They demonstrated the more artful side of what the novel was trying to say. And it's an interesting movie, really. It doesn't feel like a movie of its era. And again, I've seen that movie and enjoyed that. But I don't think I'm quite as big of a fan as, say, Martyn or Dave. I think, Dave, why are we covering this topic? Give some context to the people that are listening at home.
It's one of my favourite films. Patrick Bateman's quite a complex character that will go into the reasons why we've put some restrictions that we have. But the book's kind of unparalleled and it kind of makes his own genre. It's a horror flick, but it's like really not. Like, the horror lies within the fact that the 80s were quite a greedy, lustful, power-obsessed era. And when the book first came out in 1991, we talked about this. It had quite a lot of feminist backlash, but really the male characters are the ones that come off as the ridiculous characters, and the ones that are most self-obsessed with the exterior appearance, and the ones that look the most foolish and are most obsessed with monetary sort of innocuous, stupid, superficial things. So the violence is really is very, very extreme, but it's only kind of within his own repressed thoughts, and only kind of happens for 3 to 4 pages. So the music which is referenced in the book and the music which is referenced in the film is sort of made more ethereal and more sort of dread-filled because of the nature of it. Patrick Bateman is only listening to music and only going to high-class restaurants and only wearing the finest couture and only eating eau de cuisine because he's doing it to outwardly face towards everybody else. He is literally just trying to fit in with his peers. He would rather be sitting down talking to you about how Ed Gein chops off heads and fantasizes about how women's heads looked on spikes. He really doesn't want to be talking to you about Arcadia or MK Club or the latest single that's come out or the greatest overnight bag that John Paul Gaultier is releasing. All of these things are like things he's having to learn to fit in with his group because he wants to influence them. He wants to be the best. He wants to control them. He wants to be somebody that's the top of his pile. And some of the other controls that I put on this evening, I thought, when he's booking his first restaurant, he's flicking through the 1987 best restaurants in New York book. So I thought if we kind of peg it that he's living in 87, assumed. I mean, it's kind of conflictual between the book and the film when the period is. But if we go 2 years either side, that gives us 85 to 89. He's only really going to be talking about music which is current. To talk about any sort of music which is outside of that current time frame would be considered very uncouth, very untrendy, and he wouldn't be seen dead talking about stuff which is out of trend or out of focus in the local newspaper. So that's the only reason I said that let's pick that particular time frame.
It's crazy to me that like a lot of feminists wouldn't like the film because it's very obvious that this guy is a psychopath.
But on first reading of the book and on first looking at the film, I mean, the film, not so much. I mean, the director was a female anyway. But
Mary Harron.
Yeah. The first release of the book, the violent scenes are very sexually explicit. So you can see if you only... Say, for instance, someone's read it, not understood it, and said, this is bad because of this reason. Read this excerpt. And someone doesn't want to read the book and they're part of it, whatever. They've read this excerpt and they read page 134 about inserting rodents into orifices, then yeah, they're going to go fucking bananas because they think, what the fuck is this book about? Not realising there's 132 pages about why he's going to have a particularly striped shirt with a plain bold colour Versace couture suit because the pinstripes would clash otherwise in other bold colours, and all these kind of like nuances about stupid style rules and New York and Donald Trump and all these stupid other things which are all about the sickness of the 80s and how Reagan lied to everybody and how the Wall Street guys were just all fucking self-obsessed, coke-addled, crazy people. So the nuance is what needs to be focused on, and it's easily lost.
I agree with that, and I think one of the things that's really missed from the book and the film is that it is an attack on that toxic masculinity of one-upmanship, and I think one scene that really highlights that is the famous business card scene. It needs
to be talked about in extreme for people to understand.
It is, and I think what it also does is it makes the men in that film look utterly ridiculous.
They're the ones that look ridiculous.
Yes, they are. And the whole idea of that masculinity. But something also that hit me last night when I was watching the film was, you know how topically at the moment the whole idea of women walking home at night, safety thing. There's that scene, isn't there, where there's the woman walking home and he walks behind her and she notices and he walks up next to her, and I was like, that is so topical. That's like kind of, that is what it's all about. He genuinely is going to end up like killing her and leaving her head in the fridge. That's not likely to happen in real life, but it could. And I think what's really good about that film is it does highlight the idea that the powerful men do kind of have a monopoly on kind of women's lives as well, but it does do it in a satirical way. I think American Psycho is probably one of the most ultimate satires on masculinity I've ever read. It just basically goes, this idea of masculinity, these guys going around going, basically walking around with their cocks out, aren't they? Metaphorically, they look stupid doing it, and it doesn't mean anything. And no matter how much, material wealth they have, no matter how perfect their apartment is, no matter how good they look, they literally mean nothing. I think that's what the whole book says, and it is a very feminist book. I think it just goes to show that, like Dave said, everyone focuses on the violence against women. What people aren't seeing is, like Dave said, the nuance of that's not what's being attacked here. Women aren't being attacked; it's the men.
Although I've been harangued for being a bit of a spoiler, but I'm going to keep on going. The violence is all within his head, in my perspective.
The film makes that quite explicit at the end of it.
Yeah.
I will say that chilling look when he goes, when the lawyer he talks to at the party, when he realises he's not actually talking to whoever he thought Patrick Bateman was on the phone, and Patrick Bateman goes, "No, that was me. That was actually me." And the look on the lawyer's face was just like, what I took from that was like, if that was real, if Patrick Bateman was killing those people are so powerful and so rich. The lawyer was like, we can make this go away. It won't matter. And that was what was chilling. So whether it was in his head, whether it wasn't, are both extremely chilling.
And the ambiguity is what makes it effective.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the point I'm making about the extreme violence is the extreme violence. This book is fiction. The extreme violence happens within the fictional character's fictional mind. So you're going 2 levels deep in fiction. So to get offended by it and miss the point is almost embarrassing.
I think people need to read the book. I think people need to not just look at the film and go, "Oh yeah, he's killing loads of women. Oh, that's terrible." It needs to be like, well, what's actually going on here? What's the bigger story?
It's somebody that's struggling to maintain a veneer which they can barely maintain because they're so mentally ill.
I mean, there's another great scene in it where he tries to book actually there's 2 scenes. There's one where he tries to book, which to me is the best 2 scenes in the whole film, which show that his difference between his reality and reality is when he first tries to book a room at Dorsia and all he gets is the guy laughing at him at the other end of the phone. However, he tries to do it again later on in the film and the guy goes, "Sorry, we've got no reservations."
I think what's great about the film, and I can't figure out whether this is in my mind or in the film, I can almost feel a static pitch in the audio when he says things which are quite clear in his head. So when he first goes to that nightclub and orders a drink in a bar, she turns around and says something like, "Oh, we don't have that. Those tokens aren't good anymore. We've only got this." And as soon as she turns around, you can almost hear the audio shift up and he just goes, "You're a fucking ugly bitch." And I can't remember what he says after that.
But that was in his head.
Yeah.
I don't think he said that.
You can quite clearly hear that he didn't audibly say that.
And also that bit when he's talking to those girls in the booth, and he goes, she goes, "What are you into?" And he goes, "Murders and executions mostly." Yeah. And she goes, "I know a lot
Mergers
of
and acquisitions."
Yeah, and that's kind of like, you kind of think in reality he probably did say mergers and acquisitions, but in his head he wanted to say kind of. No, I'm of the camp that it was all in his head.
Ultimately, it doesn't matter because it's left up to your interpretation. We're not here to discuss the theories on the movie.
Yeah,
we're
not a film or a book podcast.
Well, yeah, exactly. So what we are here to talk about is music that we think would be representative of the kind of music that Patrick Bateman listens to in the film, without directly referencing songs that are from the soundtrack or indeed talked about in the book, because there are lengthy passages about how much he likes Whitney Houston and Huey Lewis in the News. So rather than just cover old ground and go over those songs that have been featured on multiple playlists online, we've come up with our own, and we picked 5 songs each, and in order to give us a little bit of an element of surprise, there's not going to be any ratings or rankings on tonight's episode, but we're just going to discuss the playlist on shuffle. The order doesn't necessarily mean that it's finished. It's a better or worse song. Just the order in which they come up on will be a surprise to us, and we'll cover each one and why we think they would be suitable, what we think about the song, and some general thoughts.
And this is a good excuse to talk about 80s tracks we love, because the ones that are mentioned are great and they kind of reflect the psyche of and the ethos of the book and film.
The reason why I came up with this idea in the Lost episode that might come back one day was just purely to give us some direction when we were talking about the 80s, because this doesn't limit by genre, but this doesn't limit the discussion by genre, as you'll see from some of the picks.
No, but I feel, and I think that's really important in the 80s, because there's a big shift in a lot of music. Without getting too deep into it, you can easily get lost. And I used to have discussions with people with this all the time. They say, "Oh, all the music from the 80s was just crass and disgusting." Well, it's not. It was a time where things got lost in nuance, and there was new technology, and there was new politics changing everything. And a lot of stuff you probably discounted from the 80s is actually fucking great music, and we need to look at that.
We will be covering some of that tonight on a couple of tracks that you may think, why have they selected this? Keep listening because we'll explain. With that, we'll start the list. And first up for discussion is, according to my randomizer, aka pressing shuffle on the playlist that I've created. First up is one of my picks. This one's a popular one. It could have been on many people's lists. This one is Hounds of Love, from the album of the same name from 1985 by Kate Bush.
It's the one you all forgot until I reminded you.
Yeah, fucking great shout.
How did you all forget it?
It's not perhaps the most well-known single from the album. I think Cloud Busting and Running Up That Hill.
Running Up That Hill would have been my pick.
Are probably the two most well-known. But it's an amazing album.
She's had a lot of resurgence recently in the kind of new vinyl community because a lot of her albums have been repressed and she's kind of been heralded as a great artist, which I think she woefully missed out.
Oh, yeah. Incredibly underrated, Kate Bush.
I think she's overrated.
No.
She was the Bjork of her day, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I don't like Bjork, so...
The thing with Kate Bush is I think the problem she had, she suffered because of Wuthering Heights.
Yeah.
So, like, her first two albums are really quite proggy and interesting.
Yeah. But if you think about your breakout single being a middle-class woman basically talking about her favourite period drama book, you're going to turn a lot of people off.
Absolutely, and she did. And then she's built a career on making very, very interesting music, particularly in the 80s. She's really, really musically important in changing the tone of everything. I mean, you look at, and I think she was recognised from about the early 2000s by a lot of the indie bands. I mean, look at the covers that came out. You know, you've got Placebo covering
Futureheads.
The Futureheads covering this track.
A shoe on the other foot example would be someone like Leo Sayer coming out their first single about how much they're going to write a song about Bilbo Baggins. You know, you're going to turn a lot of people. It's like, who the fuck is this short, weird-looking guy talking about Lord of the Rings?
There's always been deeper levels to her stuff, and I think the reason why I've selected this particular song, it's all about being scared of being in love, pursued by the hounds of love that she talks about. At one point, she catches a fox that's been savaged by real hounds and is dying, and its heart's beating in her hands, and it makes her ashamed that she's so scared of her figurative hounds, being the hounds of love, which is the title of the album. So it's all just about being scared to feel. And I think this is a theme that will come up a lot tonight.
That's very Bateman, isn't it?
Yes, exactly. Bateman would identify with that. He's scared of maybe showing his real self to people. And so therefore he'd be scared of falling in love.
He'd probably have this in his head when in that scene when he has that kind of, he was going to go on the date with Jean, his secretary.
Sonically, it's very much reminiscent of a lot of tracks that will come up tonight. It's got that big gated 80s drum sound. It's catchy with enough pop hooks to be radio friendly, which is what Bateman would be all about. He wants to study what's popular, what's trendy, in order to identify with what everybody else is listening to. So it's catchy enough that it fits that mold too. And that's why I've selected it. I think it's an exceptional track.
There's another reason why I was looking at Kate Bush and a few of the picks on my list as well. And I'll say it now, is you'll notice, particularly in the film, there's a scene where he's talking about Genesis. And he reels off this pitch-perfect description of their whole discography, basically. And I get the impression that he likes to talk a little bit about the history of the art. It's a bit like he talks about music in the same way that wine snobs speak about good red wine.
Yeah, it's a learned lexicon. It's not his opinion.
The ability to reel something off about it.
Yeah.
And I think Kate Bush and a few of the other artists that are going to come up.
That's actually something that hasn't dawned on my mind. My old profession is sommelier. So I was upselling very expensive bottles of wine to people in Michelin-star restaurants, and learning those facts, learning that language, learning those buzzwords is all about it. And that's literally the environment. You don't ever want to be caught short by a customer. If they reel off a fact to you, I need to be able to hit them back like, oh, you know, the Pinot Noir in 2017 was a terrible region for Burgundy, and you just come straight back with, oh yeah, I know, you know, that they had incredible blight issues, but if you went with the 2017 like I've got in the cellar, we could easily get over that problem.
And I think Bateman would as well, talking about an album or a band, he would probably directly quote stuff that he's read rather than have his own
Quite
opinion
possibly.
on.
Kate Bush is one of those artists that's got a diverse enough discography that you could have that narrative as well.
Yeah, similar to Genesis, how he talks about that in the film. Yeah.
Like, maybe it's a gut feeling, I guess, but like I personally didn't think this track was very Bateman because it didn't sound like commercial enough. Like it's one of those tracks where I can't imagine the average person at the time knowing the track, maybe, or maybe not. I'm not sure. I wasn't alive then, so I don't know.
You hear him talk about how he started liking Genesis at Duke. Now, remember that in 1980, Genesis, although Peter Gabriel had gone, are still pretty out there.
Yeah.
And he talks about how Invisible Touch is probably one of the greatest albums of all time, doesn't he? And that's got Domino Medley and the Brazilian on it. So I don't think, although we instantly associate Patrick Bateman with Huey Lewis and the News, his music taste is being shaped by the arty magazines, not by the...
Yeah, I was about to say that,
charts.
yeah.
You need to separate Vanity Fair from Patrick Bateman.
Like, you could have read it in Esquire or something.
Yeah, that's a massive distinction. Like GQ, Vanity Fair, fucking all these magazines. You don't know what he's directly quoting. I can imagine at no point he actually directly quotes his own opinion about music at any point.
But when he talks about Genesis, he's quoting some slightly more obscure music journalism. I think not like, I'm not saying Vanity Fair or something, but it's like he's quoting the US version of an NME or something like that.
In my eyes, Kate Bush is a great example. It references another horror film. It's got the sort of dark element, which is referring to a hound bounding across a barren landscape, which can be compared to his psychopathic killing tendencies. And it's an ethereal, odd woman singing the song. I think it's a great choice.
I've got to admit, I think you're right, because I mean, to be honest, as soon as I disagreed, I then thought of, all these magazines he would have read, because it shows in the film, doesn't it? Even if they critique what he's talking about, he's still got it learnt, so he will continue his dialogue as if he didn't say anything, because he is just reeling off someone else's opinion, It
was a hit as well. It reached number 18 in the UK charts. It did have a US release as well. I can't find any data on where it finished in the US. I can only find its UK positioning. But it was also popular with sort of the magazines that we talk about. I mean, Q magazine, which is maybe the musical equivalent of a GQ. They placed it at song at number 21 in its list of the 50 greatest British songs of all time. And the other thing that draws me towards the track is the intro. It's in the trees, it's coming, a sample which is from the British 1957 horror film Night of the Demon. And Bateman was all about old horror movies. I mean, maybe not that old. We don't see him watch anything that old anyway, but he's watched Texas Chainsaw Massacre. He's watching that whilst he's working out. He would be instantly drawn in by that vocal sample intro that's at the start.
I'm a bit worried because I quite like horror films and porn. So.
Next up on the randomizer shuffle. Oh, it's another one of my picks. And this is one of the more obscure songs, certainly out of my 5 picks anyway. This is the song Feel It Again by Honeymoon Suite. And they are a Canadian pop metal band. They were produced by Bruce Fairbairn, who was famous for Bon Jovi, Aerosmith, and also it was engineered by Bob Rock, who... It was where he was essentially discovered. He went on to do stuff for Metallica, Motley Crue, and everybody else. And this is the embodiment of that big emotional rock sound, the emotional hard rock that became really fashionable in the second half of the 80s. It was their only top 40 US hit. The lyrics, the song called Feel It Again, the song, the chorus is on Feel It Again, thought this heart would never mend. To feel it again, I know, is the living end. The guy who wrote the song, the guitarist, Derry Grean, he's obviously playing it for heartbreak and his heart will mend. I think Bateman would look at it as though he wants to feel something, maybe not again, but he would identify with the whole notion of longing to feel something. So I think that the lyrics would certainly strike a chord with Mr. Bateman. It's a great song. I quite like it. If you like your REO Speedwagon big 80s rock ballads, you'll like this one.
Oh, see, I thought it was far more nuanced than that. I actually really had a good time with this track, which it's probably one of my favourites of your picks, other than like Hounds of Love, because Kate Bush is amazing. But I listened to this, and it sounds like early 80s Genesis to me. It fits more with early 80s Genesis than it does with the late 80s power ballads of like Bon Jovi and stuff like that. That's how I felt after like 2 listens. I mean, you've probably... so yeah, I quite enjoyed it. It fitted with the sound of the other stuff that within the film, so it suits it in that respect. Yeah, I thought it was quite a good song, and I was pleasantly surprised. I didn't imagine Dan picking something I'd enjoy.
Thanks, Tom.
I remember your first 5 picks before you changed them, and I hated 4 of them. So
Went for a revised playlist to get these 5.
Yeah. I like your revised playlist. Interestingly, I preferred... No, it'll come up later.
We'll discuss that when we get there. Let's take it one song at a time. Anybody else have any thoughts on this one?
Classic. I love it. It was one of the picks which, as we were talking about, would be a great Bateman pick. He's like a great in-depth character, which we've been talking about, which the song echoes his empathies in life. And I think all of these picks are like any kind of 80s track with that kind of ethereal synth and otherworldly lyrics. But not like the lyrics are normally fairly down to earth. It's the delivery of them that's in that kind of falsetto, slightly up-pitch vibe. Just goes really well to people doing obscene, ultra-violent acts. Just juxtapositions.
Anything that has a
well.
big belting chorus is always going to be good.
Yeah, huge. Just like opposing flavours go really well. Salted caramel feels like it shouldn't go.
But it goes well with brutal violence.
Falsetto 80s ballads go really well together.
Yeah, well, I mean, in the book he mentions The Greatest Love of All by Whitney Houston. If it's got that blueprint of belting big drums, long sustained notes in the chorus, then it's going to be a winner. Al, what did you think of Honeymoon Suite?
Bateman would love it. It's absolute trash rock, like very run-of-the-mill sort of thing that would sell well in the charts, and he'd love it. That's kind of it. I didn't delve too deep lyrically because
you never do.
It just seemed very Bateman-y, just soft rock, the sort of thing you could emulate feelings for, but there is no real feelings. It's very surface level music, which is perfect for Bateman, really.
It's got all the elements he likes. It's got that whole like 80s gated drum, you know, the standard template, and it's got like that whole like the synths and everything, and it's very like that Mr. vibe going on. And then the rock guitars kick in, and you can imagine Bateman really feeling it, really going, yeah, this is rocking, you know. And you know, we know, you know, the stuff we listen to, it's not rocking, it's just producer music. It's the sort of song I imagine a producer wrote and went, oh yeah, let's just do this, whack it on the charts or whatever. It's
like
kind
a
of
Bob
very
Rock song.
80s. But yeah,
it's engineered by
Bateman.
Bob Rock.
Is it? Oh, that's a good guess. There we go.
Well, there you go.
I've literally just said this on the podcast. If you weren't having a wee, then you would have...
Well, I was. And it just shows how good my instincts are, doesn't it, Dan?
Yes, it does.
It's the production on it. Bateman loves it because it's as clean and perfect as his apartment is. There's no emotion there. There's no feeling. It's purely functional. It does what it needs to do.
Pretty much.
Musically, I'd say the lyrics do have a lot of emotion to it.
Yeah, maybe, but you don't hear it. You know, it's like the lyrics are written and it could be anyone reading them. But like, it's just, I feel that it's very clean and clinical. It's like a bottle of bleach in music form. It's just, it's too clean, too perfect. But then that's, you know, Bob Rock was really good at that, but he did it with better bands and stuff.
Too clean, too perfect, 7 out of 10.
9, I give it a 9.
Well, nice summary. We will move on. Next up, one of Al's picks. And it is, you're not being rickrolled. It is Never Gonna Give You Up by Rick Astley.
For me personally, this is like a perfect Bateman song. Like, it's
Absolutely.
really commercial.
Agree.
Anyone can, like, you know, even if you don't like it, like panelists here don't like it, you can't argue the fact that most people like it. It's the sort of thing he can talk about to complete strangers, and they'd go, "Oh, I do like this song. Yeah, this is rather catchy." And I'm not actually. I don't know about Rick Astley's discography, but
It's shit.
if he has, I mean, I'm just saying. Prior to this album, I'm not sure if he had any CDs.
No, this was his debut album.
So okay, so maybe he wouldn't be there because for me to be a perfect Bateman song, they have to have at least one album where they weren't really coming into their own, so he can then discuss how they really found themselves on this album. You know what I mean?
Good point.
So that's the only thing detracting from Rick Astley that isn't a Bateman song. Is the fact he hasn't got a previous work to then say, "Oh yeah, but he really found his vocals," or he really, you know, his lyrics really just came together. That's a very Bateman thing to say. So the only downside is that, but everything else,
No,
it's just perfect Bateman.
I don't think it is, because it was critically panned for good reason, because it's shit.
Completely disagree.
I don't know. Was it critically panned? Was it?
Critics,
I have no idea.
critics
I
didn't love it. It's like a lot of stuff, like sold really, really, like a lot of stuff today. It sells really, really well, but critics don't like it. And like,
well, the critics are wrong, Tom, because that song is fucking awesome.
I hate it. I hate
it's a
it
jam.
so much.
It's an incredible chorus. The strings in the chorus are beautiful. Rick Astley is an enigma in pop music, because much like Lewis Capaldi has tried to copy today, he was the everyman with a voice. Rick Astley, he's just some ginger northern guy with who sounds like he could be the lead singer of the Temptations.
That's giving him far too much credit as a vocalist.
I like this song, but I mean, if it wasn't the fact that you and Martyn hate it, I would say it's an undeniable banger. The song's class.
Oh man, I don't hate it. For me, it's got a lot of nostalgic value for it, and I agree with Dan in that I think the strings in the chorus are brilliant, and I think it's well produced. I think it's got a great hook. I think the vocals are incredible. I actually really like the song. I don't care if I never hear it again, but it's kind of one of those songs where you go, well, when you hear it, you go, oh yeah, it just takes me back to '87, which was a really great decade for me, and it's really nostalgic.
It's bang in the eye of the hurricane for Bates as well.
Yeah, I don't think you can deny Rick Astley's voice. He wasn't sounding like anyone else back then, really.
No.
He actually was quite unique. He had a really low kind of baritone-y voice. I think Bateman would love it. I think Bateman would find it an upbeat tune when he's like walking through the office with his Sony Walkman on, and that was on his tape. He would be like loving life. He'd walking into the office, he'd be like going, "Yeah, I dig this." Yeah, he'd be singing it to himself in his office while he's drawing pictures of murdered prostitutes and stuff.
I can imagine it being the sort of song like you know, with the scene with Alan. What's his second name again?
Paul Allen.
Paul Allen.
Paul Allen. That's it. Yeah.
Paul
like
Owen in
Like
the
you
book.
could quite happily put Rick Astley's like "Never Gonna Give You Up" behind him whilst he's doing that weird shimmy with his axe. I can imagine that being on the radio.
I
as
don't
he's
think
doing
it's
it.
got enough darkness in it for that, though, because the Huey Lewis thing actually in the production has a undercurrent of musical interest, which I don't think this song has.
But then Bateman wouldn't care about the nuances.
Yeah, but he would because he'd care about what people wrote about it. That's the thing.
I didn't know about the critics panning it. So, maybe you are right. If the critics panned it, he personally probably wouldn't like it. Although, I'm going to have to say, Tom, do you have no nostalgia for music?
Oh, yeah,
Do you ever
I've
listen
got-
to a song and not particularly like it, and then 15 years later do
Smashing
like
Pumpkins.
it?
Well,
You're going to hear about several songs that I have significant nostalgia for. This isn't one of them.
Yeah, but did you like them back in the day, though? For me, nostalgia is different to just liking it.
One of the ones that's going to come up later, I didn't like. Well, I was born the year it came out. I didn't particularly love it as a kid because I was subjected to it a lot, and I really like it now. There's quite a few songs like that. Like I grew up with my parents used to play Elvis Costello and the Stranglers all the time, and it got played to death when I was a kid, to the point where like I really didn't enjoy it that much. And like now, if somebody puts on the Stranglers or Elvis Costello, like I'm right there. I absolutely love it.
Yeah, but like shit songs I used to like that came out when I was too stupid to know any better because I was 7 was like No Low Limit and E17 Steam and Tick Tick Boom by fucking Will Smith and dumb shit like that. put my Walkman on and sing my little heart out to it, and have my dad shouting up the stairs, "Shut up, you fucking twats!"
I like all of those songs.
I now don't.
Surprise me.
When I was like 8, my entire music taste was based around the Mighty Duck soundtrack. So
Maybe we'll do a bonus episode on that one. Rick Astley is. I've gone deeper into his discography. I mean, we're talking about the artist of the millennium, as he was voted. Now, we do have to address the fact that we are talking in a post-meme world. So this song is now forever associated with Rickrolling and the meme that goes with it, and is never interpreted in any artistic way. It's always
there's another
just
song
a meme
which is
song.
meme related that we need to cover later as well.
And we'll get there. But I mean, it's really difficult to listen to this song as a piece of music and not a meme. I always loved this song.
yeah, I love it. Love it.
I've listened to other Rick Astley singles. He did from the same album. He did a song that was nearly Christmas #1, and it was a cover of "When I Fall in Love," which was made famous by Nat King Cole. His version of that is actually quite good. It's a more traditional sound than what was going on in the 80s. Rick Astley got really fed up with the music industry.
Yeah. I mean, for a little bit of background on him, the most recent thing I've seen him is there's a craft beer company in Netherlands called Mikkeller, which is a really like new, interesting brewery. And they made a Rick Astley-inspired beer. And when they opened their Mikkeller pub in London, Astley sang at their opening of the bar.
He's still got it. He's still a great
That was
singer.
the last time I seen him. And he did his hits or whatever, but he's got some fucking deep cuts, which is nice.
Yeah, there's a song called "Cry for Help," which is my favourite. He's also excellent on TikTok. He's quite funny. And he's really into alternative metal. So he's often playing like alt-rock songs at his concerts, a bit of Slipknot and things like that. His musical tastes are very heavy, and I think he got really disillusioned with where he was positioned as a pop artist and transitioned to a more independent, just singer-songwriter.
But he's very self-aware, isn't he? Like of where he
He's got
sits
the kind of same sort of thing as James Blunt. I mean, say what you will about him. I think he's fucking musically a twat, but
Very funny on Twitter.
and Capaldi, as you've made that announcement, they've like reached the echelons they've reached in musicality, and maybe their personalities are greater than the sum of their music aspirational contributions. But
The best thing about Rick Astley for me was when Bob Mortimer did that impression of him on Vic Reeves' Big Night Out. With, "She wants to dance with me."
Which is a banger, by the way. We'll move on from talking about Rick Astley. We will move on to the next pick, which is one of Dave's picks. Now, this stands apart from the rest in a lot of ways, I think. And it is Enya, Orinoco Flow, one of the biggest singles of 1988.
this particular song, I think, would go amazing straight first credits. You know, when the restaurant scene is coming in, and he's dining at some Michelin star restaurant. Now, I used to work in fine dining restaurants. They are fucking bullshit. They're like, way they present the food is ridiculous. Like a raspberry coulis fashioned into the shape of a triple fleur de mer with a little sea urchin ceviche to die for, with a little micro herb infusion on the top, dressed with some chive oil, flambéed obviously in its own juices. But this kind of fucking bullshit environment is perfect for Bateman. And this song I can remember hearing in like swimming baths and like aspirational bullshit middle class restaurants in the 80s. But as standalone, it's a song I fucking really like. And she has like almost, the song's called Orinoco Flow, and latter day hip hop talks about flow as like the rapping style. And the way she's sort of rhyming couplets during the verses is almost rapping. And
But she was also featured with the Fugees, got a co-writing credit on Ready or Not after she sued them because they didn't authorise the sample. When it got to #1 in Ireland, they were surprised to find that she then turned around and sued them, and she's co-credited as co-writing on that.
without blown our own trumpet. With our soundtracks episode that we did, one of my favourite soundtracks was GTA, which is like a huge soundtrack. Obviously, so you have to do multiple radio stations or whatever. I think these tracks that we've put together, I know we're only a few in, but when you get to the end of this episode, you realise we should have been fucking paid to sort this film out. Really, we need to be paid the big bucks because the people, that chuck the tracks in there are shit in comparison to our fucking picks. We've understood the depth of the character and the nuance of the book far more than those Hollywood chumps ever did.
One day we're going to be watching a film and we're going to be like, hang on a minute, I recognise every song on here as being.
I
in
think
one of our
the only one they've
podcasts.
they nailed quite a few, but like the one they really nailed for me was Phil Collins.
It's a studio.
This Enya track, like, I like it. Like, there's nothing wrong with it. It's well written, it's well put together, and I think it fits, and I enjoyed it.
I mean, it's okay for me because I've heard it before, so there's enough nostalgia for me to gravitate to it, but personally, it's not. Yeah, I'm not that into it.
For me, it's the perfect song for when I've dropped my kids off to their baby daddy and I've poured myself a Prosecco and I've poured myself a bath. And I sit in my bath with my scented candles and I listen to Orinoco Flow and I go, yeah, I am.
This
a woman.
soundtrack in your people carrier must be fucking massive by now.
It was a huge single, though. It came out the year after I was born, and I must have some early memory of Enya because I seem to recall that she may have been my first crush. And then as I grew up and listened to more of her music, I realised I'm really not down with the new age kind of precursor to whale music. It's great on a technical level, it's just not something that I will ever be on board with for more than one song. But this song has a nostalgia and I do like it, probably on the basis of only the nostalgia that it holds.
It's one of those songs where when you listen back to it, I'm actually quite surprised it was popular.
Yeah.
It's an unusual song. I think Tom will agree as well, though. One of the good things about it is the vocals and the way they were treated.
Yeah, it is.
It's really shoegaze, man.
It's dream
like-
pop in a way.
That's why I don't like it.
Have you gone through the lyrics of the song? I know Al wouldn't because he doesn't.
I listen to lyrics, I just have to like the song first before I go in depth to listen to them.
It's just about various destinations, isn't it?
Yeah, but it's just kind of like, it's really odd, kind of like odd pixie-ish sort of focus.
Well,
on
there you go. She's the original manic pixie girl, and that's why I had a crush on her. All these Zoe Deschanel's that came after,
Yeah.
Enya was the prototype.
Yeah, it's like Bjork or Grimes. Or...
Yeah, Enya was the original. She was the OG. That's why she was in the Fugees.
I was going to say, I've got just a quick aside about Enya that's quite a funny story. So I went to a primary school in quite considered to be a rough area within Plymouth.
That is funny.
Is that when you got your first tattoo?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And they used to play Enya when we were on the walk into assembly in the mornings. Just thinking back on it now, it's such a weird thing.
That is strange.
When I look back on a lot of educational choices over because I used to be a primary school teacher. I don't want to go too much in depth into this.
How many jobs have you had? Are you the most
Many.
unemployable man ever where you get sacked within like 2 weeks?
Dave's actually a video game character and they just keep putting him in different scenarios.
Yeah.
It's like you've had Dr. Mario, you've had Mario's a plumber, but he's also been a doctor and he's also been like a space traveller. Dave's the same.
I'll do a 4-year degree to become some ridiculous job, but after 2 months, I'm sick of it and I want to move on. But the kind of choices that they make for entrance music and assembly stuff, I think we used to put on M People.
Oh, God.
That what have you done to make yourself feel proud?
Oh, yeah.
One. And I used to hate having to do any kind of like brainwashy religious type lessons for people, and I always would do the opposite thought. So if you had to teach a lesson about the disciples, for instance, I'd also chuck a little bit about atheism just at the end, just to make sure that everybody had an out that wasn't.
You mentioned
Appeal
Baphomet.
to all demographics, I think it's important. And speaking of heresy, how's Baphomet doing, Martyn?
Well, he still remains elusive.
Okay, good. Just check.
So him, that is so Baphomet.
This is the kind of music that Baphomet would listen to as well, I think.
He would love it, yeah. I think Patrick Bateman would identify with Baphomet.
You could summon any of the demons, but to be honest, he could never take the place of your man.
A beautiful
And that's
segue.
the next song.
Segway.
Wasn't at all shoehorned by a 2x4 bit of wood with nails in.
And also, I think a welcome return of the Prince drink rule to the podcast. It's been a few episodes, really. Next up is one of my picks, and it is "I Could Never Take the Place of Your Man" from the masterpiece that is 1987's "Sign of the Times." This was one of the singles released on it, and is potentially the most accessible of the singles, other than maybe "You've Got the Look." It's certainly more accessible to "If I Was Your Girlfriend," and I don't think Bateman would have liked "If I Was Your Girlfriend" at all. I think it would have been far too subtle for him.
Now, the way I gave you a pass on this, and I'm going to interrupt you because you're going to go on about Prince for far too long. In the episode, we're talking about Patrick Bateman.
You tell him, Dave. You tell him.
I saw this, like, the first time you posted the Prince track, which he's since removed, I went, oh, for God's sake, Will, can we not have one episode where we don't mention Prince? Then your next one that came in was this, that went, fuck, like, the sentiments of this track are bang on.
Yes.
Because the entirety of the song is talking about he's going to have a one-night stand with somebody. He doesn't want to have a relationship with someone. He understands that they're in a relationship. He understands that they've made a mistake, and he was probably the mistake they've made. And he's just reassuring them, hey, what we've had this evening, I've enjoyed, but we're not going to carry it on any further because you've got somebody who loves you and I'm not going to love you. I'm completely devoid of any emotion for you.
Plus, I mean, me personally, I think it might be my favourite Prince song. It's between this and Purple Rain. I just really like Purple Rain.
That concert that he did Cream, this, and something else back to back.
It's because when I lived with Whittle, this is probably the song I heard the most. Oh, well, I not heard the most, but recognised the most off the endless live DVDs I watched of him. Well,
the Sign of the Times version from the movie concert is incredible.
Yeah, it's a belter. I love this song. It is good.
Yeah,
and as you said, very very Bateman-y.
It's got that. It's got the big 80s drum sound. It's got the hooky guitar line. It's got everything Bateman would want from a pop record, and it is a pop record. The themes of it do match up completely. It wouldn't be a Prince song without being nearly 7 minutes long and having a breakdown with some blues guitar on it. Whether Bateman would dig the full album version, I don't know. Maybe he'd prefer the more concise single version
every day of the week.
Yeah, I would say concise.
But I'm not going to nominate a song on the podcast and not let you listen to the joy in its entirety.
Yeah, but like with most Prince songs, once you get to the 3-minute mark, just turn it off and then it's better.
So I'm going to pause it to you now because I may never get this chance again. But Prince's "I Could Never Take the Place of Your Man" is an undeniable banger.
For me, it's a yes.
I really like this song.
I don't want to. The thing is, it's going to annoy me because
because it's going to annoy him.
I'm actually tempted.
You can't say no.
I'm actually tempted to agree. There's only one problem with this song. There's one problem, and I dare you all to listen to it really, really loud because you'll notice in the breakdown.
I listen to it loud all the time.
Yeah. There's a floor tom roll or something that's completely out of tune in the pre-chorus every time in the album version, and it bugs the crap out of me. But apart from that, yes, it is an undeniable banger. It's just that bit irks me so much. I'm going to let you have it, but there's a caveat that he needs to take the fucking floor tom out of it. The other thing is that the other Prince track that Dan...
I originally had She's Always in My Hair, which is the B-side of Raspberry Beret. I took it out ultimately because it's a B-side and Patrick Bateman wouldn't be listening to it on the record.
Although, actually, I do actually really like that song.
The reason he listens to music is purely to talk to other people who will know the music as well.
Yeah.
So, B-sides he wouldn't bother with.
I think Bateman's relationship with Prince would be this. He would love the music, he would love the hits, but he really wouldn't want to watch the videos or look at the posters because he would feel uncomfortable.
Is this song an undeniable banger?
Oh, yeah, totally, man. Yeah, unbelievable. Yeah.
Is this song an undeniable banger?
Oh, yeah, man.
Boo. It's on the list.
It's on the list, and you can check out the list on our blog, where you can see all the songs that have passed the initiation ceremony on the podcast. And as much as I hate to move on from Prince, but it is just an incredible piece of music. Listen to it now, and Bateman would be definitely listening along. We'll move on. The randomizer goes to one of Martyn's picks. his first choice of the evening. This one is English new wave band Wang Chung with Everybody Have Fun Tonight.
Incredible band, fucking love it.
Everybody Wang Chung tonight. Wang Chung actually means yellow bell in Chinese, which makes no sense.
I chose my choices basically. I got myself into Patrick Bateman's character, and I was like, what would I like if I was Patrick Bateman, and when would I listen to it? Because I think Patrick Bateman would choose the moment with which these songs would resonate with him. He wouldn't just listen to, you know, in that scene when he's listening to Lady in Red in his office. He wouldn't listen to that in the limo on the way to work. It just wouldn't work for him. So with this song, I basically, in brackets, put, you know, threesome. He'd basically have this song on when he had a couple of ladies of the night round his house, and he'd whack it on, and everybody have fun tonight, because he takes things literally. So he'd be like, let's have fun tonight, even though he's got coat hangers in his fucking drawer and that. But yeah, musically, it is cool. Like, Wang Chung are great. They're just... for me, they're not a guilty pleasure, but yeah, I do love that whole kind of vacuous.
Dance All Days, that's my favourite Wang Chung.
Dance All Days is their best song, I think. I think it's fantastic.
It's just good dancing music, isn't it?
It is. It's songs like, you know, Living in a Box by Living in a Box. It means nothing, but they're great songs, and it's just like, you just listen to the sound of it, and like, they're very upbeat, and they're very like kind of just, you know, meaningless little bits of... It's like eating marshmallow. You know what I mean?
The reason I gave you props for choosing this song is like, the song I would like to have chosen but didn't fit into the time period was The Vapors Turning Japanese.
Yes, exactly. It's a good tune, man. It's cool. I imagine him like, you know, he's in his apartment, he's got a couple of women round, he's given them his Chardonnay that they're not drinking, and you know, he's just enjoying himself, and this is making him feel good in his own way.
Martyn, I don't want you to get drunk, but that's a perfectly good Chardonnay you're not drinking.
See, I would never leave a Chardonnay undrunk.
I believe you.
Wang Chung are not a band I'm overly familiar with.
I'm the same.
One of the lesser known new wave bands, and I can't say I'm familiar with the other song that you mentioned.
They were kind of like they were more on the clean end of new wave. They were good, man. You know, they were a good band.
They're the kind of band I imagine someone from the Breakfast Club listening to.
Oh, you've hit the nail on the head.
Wang Chung wrote a song for the Breakfast Club, didn't they?
Did they really?
Yeah, I think they wrote a song for the Breakfast Club film. Right, Google is fact-checking this now.
Fact check.
Yeah, they did. They recorded
Fire
the
in
song
the
Fire in the
Twilight.
Twilight
That fact
for the Breakfast
has
Club.
been checked.
Looking at it, they did quite a lot of soundtrack work in the early to mid-80s.
Next up on the list is a big song from a big soundtrack. The artist has not really been talked about as much as I would imagine on this podcast. The godfather of soul himself, James Brown, with the huge hit Living in America. Martyn, this is yours.
Yeah, this was my choice, and I've got a lot of affection for Living in America, because when I was a very young lad, you know, I was learning about music, and it was all from Now cassettes and Radio 1, and Living in America, I was just like, what is this? And it was probably one of my first introductions to funk, and as you all know,
It's a fucking heavy hitting motherfucker.
I love funk.
Well, it's for a boxing film, so it's
Funk is in my soul, and yeah, it was part of that whole, like, you know, it was in the Rocky film and all that. But I basically, from Bateman's point of view, he would love it, because he would listen to it. Probably he's just secured a deal with another major company, you know, mergers, acquisitions thing, and he's just completed a deal, and he's got one over on Paul Allen, and he's feeling really good about himself, and he's in a limo, and he's on his way to like a restaurant to meet Evelyn or whatever. And
who have you got the Fisher account for, Rolf?
Yeah, but he would feel pumped about it. He'd feel pumped about it. He'd be like, kind of, I am the man, but he'd be going like, this is America. I am America. And he'd be looking at all the high rises in New York in his limo.
Yeah, well, it's Trump's gentrification, and Trump actually fucking walked out to this music.
Living in America is what I imagine Trump listens to in his head on 24/7.
No, it's what he walked out to his fucking speeches.
Which is sad.
That's why it's bang on.
It's
and
sad.
all the way through the film, Trump is referenced. Is that Ivana Trump?
Is that
Donald Trump's car?
It's his hero, isn't it? Trump is Bateman's hero.
I'll meet you in the Trump Towers this evening at 8. But yeah, Trump was the boy back in those days, because You have to understand that New York was a fucking really troubled area and in a lot of trouble, and Trump turned it around, not in a good way.
But the song itself is a fucking banger. I mean, it's so well produced. The song still stands up as like just a beaut of a funk track.
But the thing I always love with James Brown is he always used to take session musicians and walk them through the same process, which was basically the bass guitarist would be the lead after the drums. And he wanted people to hit on the one. Now, when people wanted to explain to him what the one was, it was just the first hit of it. It was always 4/4. And the first hit of the 4, he wanted to be like the exposition. So, boo, living in America. And everything is on the one every single time. All those other drums. Hot Pants, fucking Big Payback. Everything is 1, 2.
The arrangement is as good as a Parliament track. There's so much going on. There's so many horns and so many instruments.
Like Parliament were in James Brown's track for the same time and were taught by him to hit on the one.
I don't think there's a song that exists that emotes the 80s America more than this. I think it makes you think of skyscrapers.
This is also the point where James Brown breaks bad and starts taking PCP and fucking beating his wife up and shooting his car and getting arrested and doing loads of weird shit.
Oh, James.
No, it's an amazing song, and I stand by it, but it is a Bateman anthem.
Yeah.
James Brown is one of the all-time greats and one of the pioneers of funk music. I don't like this song.
I don't like it.
By James Brown standards, it's quite derivative. I think he really got lost in the shuffle in the 80s when synths and drum machines started coming in. And you had people like Herbie Hancock's transition to synth funk very well. So you've got the rise of people like Prince, Rick James, and then you had bands like Cameo, Confunction going for a more synth funk sound. James Brown's organic 60s, 70s funk really got lost in that mix. I think this sounds a bit similarly to how Stevie Wonder lost his way in the 80s. It's a big hit, but like I just called out to say I love you, it's really not his best work, even though it's one of his more well-known songs. I'd say it's largely James Brown by numbers, and it's more of a pop song than a funk song.
That's exactly why it's a fucking banger.
I personally don't
Other
like
people, it would be, it's a sellout or whatever, but not in this case.
It wouldn't
no.
surprise me. It's so commercial and so obviously aimed to be commercial. Like, it wouldn't surprise me if this song was on like the Ghostbusters soundtrack.
Who do you want to do your Ghostbusters fucking soundtrack? Whoever fucking little twats in the charts or a funk legend?
I would take Ray Parker Jr.'s Ghostbusters over this 1,000,000 times.
Yeah, I think the Ghostbusters tune's better than this.
Okay, so that film wasn't a great example.
I wish we were talking about a different James Brown single, but it's very Bateman. He would buy into the idea of the song, especially with the themes of living in America, because that yuppie culture had an element of patriotism about the Wall Street and being very proud to be American.
Yeah, of course, because it was like generating them fucking shitloads of cash. And
Exactly.
And I've got to say, as a massive James Brown fan, you know, I fucking adore James Brown, and I adore his band and his musicians he's worked with. This is probably in my lower echelons of James Brown songs.
Oh, it's right at the bottom.
But it is. But I went from a total Bateman point of view.
Oh, it's pure Bateman. Like, this is one of the better ones for Bateman. This is perfect.
For me, this is a fucking incredible James Brown track. I love it. I think it's a fucking real driving banger, which is indicative of the time, and he moved with the times and was able to do so by surrounding himself with good musicians, and this is a great example of driving 80s funk. And you have to understand the man, that this is the time he's got divorced, he's going fucking off the rails.
Yeah, it's crazy. He led a police chase, didn't he?
Yeah. This single hits pretty much at the peak of his insanity.
And the way I see James Brown isn't a musician, but he's like a conductor of an orchestra.
No, exactly. He's exactly that, Martyn. Exactly that.
We will talk about James Brown, I'm sure, in a future episode, because he's very important to the foundation of what we have
also
today.
He's a very interesting man and lived a horrendous upbringing. But yeah, we need to do an episode on him.
He's a right picking for a special, definitely. Speaking of legends, should we talk about another legend? Because this one is one of Dave's picks, and it's one of the biggest singles by a solo member of a particular group who you might recognise. His name is George Harrison. And in 1987, he released Got My Mind Set on You, which is actually a cover. But it was one of the most successful post-Beatles singles by a member of the Beatles. It's a feel-good song. It's completely different.
It's almost like Katrina and the Waves.
It's so like what the Travelling Wilburys were doing.
Yeah.
It's very...
I think it's
very
bit
Tom
more.
Petty.
It's a bit more pop than Travelling Wilburys.
A little, but not at their poppiest. The Travelling Wilburys are pretty close to this, and so I think George Harrison's been hanging out with those guys. He's met Tom Petty, and this is his version of that. I really like this song. Like, I don't mean that in a derogatory way. I think this is one of the tracks I grew up with like, again, my dad was into this one because he's also into the Travelling Wilburys. And it's great. Like, it's just fun. It would have been, again, it's perfect Bateman fodder because he could put it on and talk about how George Harrison was in the Beatles.
Yeah, and the reason I suggested it is for that reason, and the fact is the subject matter is I'm zeroing in on a target.
With this song, I have very strong memories of it. My dad, he's not really into music. He doesn't really listen to music as such. It's not his thing. But he went through a stage of buying vinyl, and he bought this on 7-inch. And Sunday nights, on Access Day nights, when I used to go and visit my dad after he divorced my mum, we'd have like listening to music nights, and this would be one that he'd always put on, and he loved it. And I don't like this song at all. It's got bad memories. Access Day, you know what I mean? It's quite traumatic for me. But it's kind of got that for me. But I kind of get how like Bateman would like it in the way that it's almost like the Beatles are a bit too much for him. The Beatles are too experimental, too artsy. But George Harrison, oh yeah, I can get into that. You know what I mean? It's simple, it's easy.
And in juxtaposition to Tom, I've selected this because 100% that reason. It'd be a Bateman track. It's very superficial. It's very on the surface. It's very consumable. And it's the track I hate the most out of all my selections. I would never listen to this normally. I think it's shit.
It's very dad rock, isn't it?
Extreme dad rock.
But I don't mind it.
It's George Harrison. Fucking give George Harrison a pass.
Yeah. I think the reason why I have a soft spot for this song is because of the fact that it features Jeff Lynne on bass and keyboards. And Jeff Lynne has got a magic touch for me. So there's always going to be something I can find in a song.
Anything with Jeff Lynne on is fine by me.
Mate, for me, it's just listening to an inkjet printer.
Which Patrick Bateman would love.
Yeah, he'd love that.
He would love it. He'd be walking through his office and he'd hear like...
Before we start warning ships away from their destination, we'll move on to the next song, which is one of Al's picks. And this is... It's similar to another song that we've discussed, certainly in production values. This may be an unpopular song with some people on the podcast. It's also a cover version, just like the last one, originally by Tommy James and the Shondells. This one is I Think We're Alone Now by Tiffany. Produced by Stock Aitken and Waterman, another one of their specials, just like Rick Astley.
This is better than Rick Astley.
I don't think so.
It sounds almost like a Go-Go's song.
It's a cover of a track which fits into that 50s Cadillac kind of movies, picking up a milkshake vibe, because that's what the original was in for.
It's kind of a bit like Living in America, isn't it? It's just that same level of just commercial toss.
Americana, yeah.
I can imagine the song I Think You're Alone Now if it was done by one of those sort of 80s female guitar fronted bands, you know, like the Runaways or the Go-Go's or something like that. Then it would be really good if it had like a little tiny bit of an alternative.
Yeah, but then it would have a tinge of irony. Whereas this has got a tinge of, well, it works in the 50s, why the fuck can't it work now?
There was a lot of that in the 80s. You had like Shawaddy Waddy and Darts that brought like the doo-wop thing as well.
Yeah, and I think that although that's not going to be nuanced enough to go over Bateman's head, I think it's nuanced enough for us to discount it because it's a rehash of 30 years prior. and it was done by people that wanted to make a quick buck. It wasn't done by people that understood the zeitgeist of the current political socio era of the 80s.
I liked it just because, as before, it's just hyper commercial, and I think it's very much an 80s thing where a lot of these songs, it's a pros and it's a big pro and a big con of the 80s, where there just seems to be just a lack of self-awareness to their own cheesiness. In the 80s as well, there's just such a lack of self-awareness in music where, like, even like 3 years later, you can be like cringing, going, oh, what were they thinking?
I think that's true of everything that Stock Aitken and Waterman did, but that's because I think they were the Simon Cowells of the time, being the puppeteers with their progeny, like Kylie Minogue.
Also, New York and then London in that era under Thatcher was the epitome of nouveau riche. People exploded money and didn't have anything to do. One of the greatest comedy political socio criticisms I've seen is, you ever watch Harry Enfield and Chums in the 90s? Paul Whitehouse used to have a character which was based upon someone he saw in the street in the East End of London, where tradesmen started to make a whole lot more money because they were doing jobs on
loads of money.
Mm. So it's been criticised a lot, but it's a perfect example of this period of time in the 80s where it's just like a massive boom, and the boom happened in such a vacuum of austerity that it took the culture and all of the art and music a fucking couple of minutes to catch up with it, because there was such a kind of like explosion of money and people couldn't really catch up with trying to keep up with the Joneses, and end up with you have a big period of people just looking a little bit silly because they've gone from a very low class existence of life to a really kind of upper echelon which they are trying to reach for but are never really part of the same club.
But that's just a lack of self-awareness then. I think nowadays, because of the internet, because of social media, self-awareness is so huge amongst people. People create something and they're going, how is this going to present to people, because everyone's going to see it?
Yeah, you're hyper aware nowadays, but there was no awareness back then.
Awareness, because it was like no one's going to see this except for people who buy the record or watch the video. And like nowadays, it's like you think about Rebecca Black's Friday, right? If that was made in the 80s, she wouldn't have got the ridicule that she did, because people would have heard it and gone, yeah, that's shit, I won't buy it. Or people would have gone, I like it, I'll buy it. Whereas nowadays, it's like you make it and everybody sees it, whether they like it or not. And I think it's all about kind of the exposure of what you're making as an artist. Everybody's going to see it. And if it's not very good, people are still going to see it. Whereas back then, in the 80s, if it wasn't very good, no one was going to see it. Yeah. And, and I think that there's that lack of self-awareness back then, which made music more honest in a lot of ways.
Next up is also another big song from a soundtrack, and undoubtedly one of potentially the most polarising songs that we discussed tonight. It's by Berlin, and it is their mega hit from the Top Gun soundtrack, which is called Take My Breath Away.
What a pile of shite.
I mean, this is about as power ballad as power ballad
This
gets.
is one of Al's picks.
Yeah, this is just another one. I promise my reasoning for putting all of this on is going to be the same for everyone, because I did it relatively quickly when I picked these tracks. It's just a ultra commercial power ballad, soft rock trash fest, and for me that's kind of Bateman. I can imagine him putting this on as he's murdering people.
On a Bateman level, I think it's too obvious. I don't think it would. The track itself wouldn't have reviewed well enough, and it wouldn't have been a good enough talking point for him.
I've like this. I haven't looked into reviews, and I've been. To be honest, your observation is right. I haven't really put enough thought into.
And also, it's a fucking shite song, and it should Like I if I never heard it again, I would be much happier than if I have to listen to it again.
Do you know what, Tom? I'm going to disagree with you in one sense. I agree that, like, if I never heard it again, I'd be happy. But when growing up as a young lad, and when Top Gun came out, and hearing it on the radio all the time, there were elements of it that I really liked, and I think the production was really good, and the chord choices were really good.
And the chord choices are iconic, aren't they?
Yeah, that bass is iconic, and it does evoke that nostalgia.
Yeah, it is. And I think from a purely Patrick Bateman point of view, this would have been the song. If you'd put this song instead of Lady in Red in that scene where he's sat at his desk before Kimball comes to see him, I think it would have fit just as well.
The thing is, Lady in Red works because it's the popular track by a musician who has been popular with critics for a long time.
That doesn't matter to Bateman. That doesn't matter. He just likes what's relevant at the time, and that was one of the most relevant songs of that time. It was everywhere. You couldn't go anywhere without hearing it. And I think what would resonate with Bateman would be that the major audience for that song and the film Top Gun were females. I remember in my little village, all the girls went to the fucking cinema to watch this film Top Gun, and I wanted to watch it because it was about warplanes, and like they all came back and they're like, that's the best film I've ever seen. And I watched it and I thought it was a pile of shit because it's not about warplanes, it's about Top Gun and Tom Cruise and Val Kilmer with the tops off and that. And I think Bateman would probably have loved it because he'd have been like, oh, this is a way in with the women. Oh, yeah, he's in there, man.
He would have been out there playing volleyball.
Yeah, he totally would, man. But yeah, I think this definitely would have been on Patrick Bateman's Sony Walkman. He would have loved listening to this.
The only downside to this argument is, like, did Huey Lewis and the News, did they review well?
Yeah.
Did they? I have no idea. I'm just asking.
Yeah.
I'm just curious.
Oh, just a little bit of interest as well. Like with Huey Lewis, poor guy, he suffers from such hearing loss that he can't really hear music anymore, which is really sad. I thought, as a musician, as a successful musician, a recording musician, to not be able to hear must be fucking tragic.
Earlier in their career, they were quite critically well acclaimed.
It is sad to hear about his hearing loss, but I'm sure he's fine because he doesn't need money, he doesn't need fame. He doesn't even need a credit card to ride that train because that's the power of love.
Also, he's made the decision to take money over music, so it's fine.
We'll move on to the next song on the playlist, though, which is The Magnificence of Fleetwood Mac. And this is Everywhere.
Oh, it's one of mine.
Yeah, so this is your pick, Tom.
Fleetwood Mac, the reason I went for Fleetwood Mac is because of the spiel he gives about Genesis and how they were too arty. And I think that you could replace Genesis in that scene with Fleetwood Mac really easily, and he could give the same spiel about how they started off too bluesy and arty, and then they changed direction when Lindsey Buckingham and Stevie Nicks joined, and now this is their most accessible album with Tango in the Night. You could do exactly the same speech with Fleetwood Mac instead
I
of
agree.
Genesis, and it would
This
still
is
work.
perfect.
Yeah.
I've got great memories of this track because Tango in the Night, again, we're in the only era my dad ever bought albums, and Tango in the Night is one of the albums he bought, and I used to listen to it all the time. And Everywhere is a track that I didn't really like as a kid because I bought my first record when I was about 3, and it was Smashing Pumpkins' Gish. So I was really very into sort of heavy stuff from a very young age. Because it's my mum's fault because she introduced me to like Budgie and Can and stuff like that from the age of about 1. So dad would put on Everywhere, and I'd be like, oh, this is boring and shit. And now I listen back to it and I'm like, yeah, this is the greatest song on the album, and I really enjoy it. And it gets stuck in my head. It's got a great hook. It's Fleetwood Mac doing pop, and they do pop better than most of the stuff on this list. This is a proper pop track that's done, I would say, better than anything Stock Aitken and Waterman produced.
Rick Astley was better.
Tom, I agree with you. I myself also, growing up, heard Fleetwood Mac a lot on the radio and stuff, and was just like, oh, what is this FM fucking rock bullshit? I've recently become a little bit obsessed with Fleetwood Mac, probably because I've watched a few documentaries about them. And I watched a documentary about Christine McVie, a couple of nights ago.
Who's the lead vocalist on this song?
Yeah, she's an underrated fucking.
Oh, she's
musician
incredible.
Ever.
Yeah.
Incredible. But they all are.
Oh, the story
They're
behind
so
them is
deep.
insane.
It's insane, especially the recording of Rumours, man.
Their Divorce album.
And Tusk, even
Tusk
more
is
so.
my favourite of their albums.
Bateman would love Fleetwood Mac because they are so well produced. They're so fucking like. Their music is so well played. It's so interesting.
And there's a story.
It's a travesty that they sacked Lindsey Buckingham, who was pretty much, in my mind, their best musician. You know, he did a lot of production work with them. He wasn't just the guitar player, singer. He did a lot of the production. He was kind of like the driving force musically for them.
For me, Fleetwood Mac has still the best when they had Peter Green as the guitarist.
Well, of
singer.
course, you know, but, you know, that's us being like music elitists, isn't it? You know,
I'd say the same thing about Peter Gabriel and Genesis.
When I played in a shit DJ gig that I took in an art centre in Windsor, we booked Peter Green as quite an elderly, overweight gentleman to play about 10 songs. He was fucking incredible.
He was my first ever gig. Was Peter Green and the Splinter Group and John Mayall and the Blues Breakers, which would have been, 95, 96? I was taken by my piano teacher, and it was fucking great. And even though he was off his face, and you could... Peter
I thought
Green...
you were talking about your piano teacher.
He might have been, I wouldn't know. I was like 7. But Peter Green, you couldn't understand a word that he said, but as soon as he started playing the guitar, it was like, oh fuck, the guy can still do that. He can't speak, but he can play guitar better as well as anybody else.
Peter Green's one of the most influential British blues musicians ever. He kind of literally invented the white British blues scene. He did a Syd Barrett, didn't he? Where he disappeared.
Yeah, he did.
But he ended up like they tracked him down, didn't they?
Well, they went to Berlin, apparently, didn't they, as a band, and he disappeared off and never reappeared.
They ended up finding him in like Dorset somewhere, running a farm or something, didn't they? Where he grew a beard and he was just was riding tractors around and stuff. He just and he sold the famous 59 Les Paul, which Kirk Hammett now owns, I think, that Eric Clapton owned and Jimmy Page owned it for a while, I think. But yeah, he's one of those musicians who was a total genius, went off on his mad thing and ended up being a farmer.
Fleetwood Mac have got a fascinating backstory, and I'm going to put a pin in it for a moment because I have a feeling we may be returning to discuss some more Fleetwood Mac a bit later on. Just a hunch. We'll move on. Next up is one of Tom's choices. And this is an iconic song. Well, it's certainly, in terms of its use in a movie, if you're a fan of John Cusack in Say Anything, you'll recognise In Your Eyes as the song that is blaring from the jukebox as he stands outside her window in the pouring rain. Peter Gabriel.
I didn't actually know. I didn't actually know it was used.
That's the most famous use of this song.
Yeah.
Peter Gabriel being the former lead singer of Genesis, so we've mentioned him briefly before on tonight's episode. Tom, why this choice?
I knew Peter Gabriel had to be in there somewhere just because I much prefer Peter Gabriel's era Genesis over Phil Collins, and he goes on about how good Phil Collins is. And then in this this album that came out in this era, Peter Gabriel out.
Okay, but I interject with Sledgehammer.
The reason I didn't choose Sledgehammer is because I heard it so much growing up, I now hate it and don't want to hear it again. Even though I realise it's a better Bateman track.
I'm going to say something controversial here. In my honest opinion, I would put Gabriel up there with David Bowie as...
Yeah, so would I.
Yeah, as an artist. I really would.
I wouldn't. I would pick Collins there ahead of Gabriel.
No! I will not stand for that.
I haven't listened to much of them. I just thought this song was shit. It's too dreamy.
The stuff he did with Genesis in the 70s is incredible. Lyrically, it's interesting. His solo output in the 2000s was quite industrial metal.
A crap genre accent.
Rammstein are industrial metal.
I'm allowed to have one. I also quite like Static X.
Imagine you're a complete shat upon member of a band, which is basically crumbling because you don't get on with each other. You shoot off into another direction on a solo act. Your wife leaves you. You're being estranged from your family, and you release 2 or 3 fucking soul and funk bangers.
They weren't Gabriel albums. Gabriel made much better music than Collins.
One
ever
thing
did.
we can agree on is that both Peter Gabriel and Phil Collins are certainly better than Mike and the Mechanics.
Yes.
Yeah,
That I agree. Yeah.
In Your Eyes by Peter Gabriel, I like the song. But I'm more in the Phil Collins camp than the Peter Gabriel camp. But interestingly, Genesis I much prefer with Peter Gabriel.
If it was up to me, I just delete Genesis. I just highlight over them and delete.
Let's introduce our next song for the evening. This I think will be less polarizing. I certainly think it's a contender for an undeniable banger. It's Broken Wings by Mr. Mister, one of Dave's choices. Incredible song.
It's pretty good song.
Fuck.
The emotion in the delivery, the vocals are out of this world. Great performance vocally. The build of the song is so entrenched in that 80s sound, even with the whooshing of like, you can almost hear the song stepping off an airplane. It's dripping in commercialism, but also it's got that dark undertone.
Both me and you, Dan, like vocalism is probably our strong point, and I'm not a mess. I can strum a few chords on a guitar. I can play a few licks on drum. I'm not a particularly good musician. Anything else, I tend to have a good ear. Probably if I'm pushed, the most thing I can do is sing, and this is similar to a few other Wintwood tracks that I've suggested, and that ilk of 80s singer seems to have some kind of mid-range between falsetto and baritone, which is just, I can't hit. And I know the lyrics, I know where the chord progression is going, I know everything about it, but I can't sing along because my voice just isn't unable.
I was belting this one out earlier. This is one of the ones that stayed with me.
Would Patrick Bateman sing along to it?
No.
I don't think he would want to draw any unnecessary attention to himself.
Good point.
He doesn't want to be the centre of attention. He wants to fit in.
What can I do for you, Patrick? If you want to do anything, I suggest you stop making this fucking scene.
Which is one of the things that separates me from Patrick Bateman as someone who's quite...
You want the attention.
Yeah, I mean, I've got a lot of similar tastes in things to Patrick Bateman, but I will quite, not in murder. I do mine differently. Yeah.
You can't edit any of this out, down that's all in there.
Bateman would not be a public singer, certainly. He may sing along in his office when he thinks nobody's listening, but I don't think he'd want any attention to any particular talent. He doesn't want to be outstanding at anything. He wants to be really competitive in his field, but I don't think he's not ego-driven to the point where he wants to be the best. He wants to be able to survive at a level of anonymity that he attempts to preserve. And I think singing is out of the question for
But the reason I chose it a track, obviously another great track, it's talking about redemption and possibly fallen angels and that sort of vibe, but it's a great 80s track. I first heard it because it's sampled on a 2-pack track that I bought in the early 2000s. I didn't actually hear it first time around, but the bass line is incredible. Really kind of driving, and the beats are, your normal kind of run-of-the-mill gated drums like Martyn was on about, but the bass is kind of stand out. And like I said, the lyrics kind of like hits in a point that I can't reach. So I love that. And Wintwood sings there as well, and Hall & Oates sing in that range. There's a few acts from that era that hit that point. That
Hall & Oates would have been on this list, but I think that by 85, they went for a bit of a more indie patch as opposed to their big hits. Big Bam Boom in 1984, that was kind of the end of commercial Hall & Oates, so they don't quite qualify.
But they're kind of like that high middle C, which seemed to be the marker of your great singers.
Yeah.
Do we think Broken Wings by Mr. Mister is an undeniable banger?
Nah.
No.
I like it, but not enough to be on the list.
Next up on the list is another one of Tom's picks. I'm sure Al will be pleased to hear this one. This one is the Cocteau Twins, who are a personal favourite of mine. And this is not my favourite of their songs, though. It's
No, nor mine.
Carolyn's Fingers from 1988. So, Tom, talk us through this one, please.
Let me get this clear, right? So my taste in music from the 80s is very American indie rock. So like in the 80s, there were bands like Sonic Youth and Yola Tango doing some fucking amazing stuff. I also like some of the British stuff as well.
The Replacements would have been on this list if Let It Be had come out in 85 as opposed to 84.
Yeah, but it's like Cocteau Twins, Ivo would have been on this list, but it came out in 84.
Yeah. Or Lorelei.
Yeah, 84
I
as well.
wanted to choose Devo, Whip It, or Susie and the Banshees, Hong Kong Garden, but they weren't available.
Yeah, and you put these year restrictions on. It's your fault.
To be fair, there's one reason why Patrick Bateman would listen to the Cocteau Twins.
It reviews
There's
well.
only one reason. There's only one reason only, is so that he would have something to talk to Stash and Vanda about in that nightclub scene. I don't think Bateman would listen to the
It's too different. This is not the sort of thing that he would take the risk on being found out.
I think it was critically. I think the Cocteau Twins have always been critically acclaimed in every magazine. Like, I dare you to between 83 and 91, they released fucking gazillions of albums and EPs. Between their 84 album, their 88 album, which this is off, there's 5 albums in between. Or 5 albums and EPs.
Trouble is, Patrick Bateman wouldn't listen to them. They wouldn't be on his radar. They would be so far from his radar, it's unbelievable. The only reason he'd listen to them is so he would sound cool with the goths.
You couldn't give a fuck about the goths.
To talk about the track, it's not their best work. Their best work is Treasure in 84, but it's still fucking good.
You know my love for the Cocteau Twins, man, but Bateman wouldn't
Heaven
listen
or
to
Las
them.
Vegas for me, maybe. To talk about the song for a minute, there is an ineffable quality to the Cocteau Twins in that it takes a while to listen to the lyrics and realise that she's not singing in any language. In a lot of it, it's just vowels and syllables that sound faintly like words that you may recognise.
Yeah, that sounds really good. That sounds like a song I want to listen to. That what you just described sounds like the sort of thing I'd listen to. This song is absolutely unlistenable. It's awful. Sorry, go on, Dan.
Personal taste aside, Bateman would find something attractive about a song that almost sounds like real words but isn't. It's almost like a replication of language. And he would have, on some level, this notion that what he's feeling is almost real, but isn't. And that's what this song would be for Bateman, if he heard it. I don't know whether it's commercial enough for him to have listened to it and be on his radar, as Martyn said. If he did listen to it, I think he'd love it.
I don't know. I get your point, Dan. I think I totally get your point, but I just think it would be so far out there that he would just give up. He would just go, it's not immediate enough for him. It's just like, he would go, I don't understand what's going on here.
There are arguments why
It's
it would
too
be on
alternative.
there. I mean, I think Dan's reason might be a bit of a stretch. The only thing that would keep me going back is that Tom said it reviewed well. So if it reviewed well, I can imagine him reading it in Esquire or something and then talking about it. But I definitely lean more towards Martyn, where it's just a little bit too out there for him to put his neck on the line, like in a conversation, to say he likes it or to commit himself to it, because it is very polarizing.
I think it's polarizing now. I don't think at the time it was particularly polarizing.
It sounds polarizing to me.
Definitely were.
I just don't think Bateman would ever give it the time of day. I just don't. It wouldn't be enough for him to put on his Walkman when he's going through his day, or to put on his stereo at home when he's like doing his workout and stuff.
It's too off-piste. Now, don't get me wrong, I love the band. I think they're great. But the particular choice of single, I don't think it's the strongest. And I think
It had to go
you're
on because it was the only
at
thing in this
straws. Yeah, you were clutching at straws because you wanted a particular type of band that you couldn't shoehorn in.
I was hoping to kind of quell the tension surrounding these more obscure shoegaze picks, but the next one is another one of Tom's picks. So the next song is Birthday by Sugar Cubes, who were fronted by Björk in the mid-80s.
Is that how you pronounce her name? Björk?
Yeah, technically, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, Björk.
I don't say it that way, but that's the correct way. I mean, the reason I picked this song is so on the soundtrack for the film, and there's all stuff like The Cure and New Order and that sort of thing. So it was clearly in there at the time. And so I think that this song fits in well with that. I think the vocals are incredible. I think it's really well performed. It's definitely got that sort of vibe to it. And so I do think, and again, it's critically acclaimed music that I think he would have had an exposure to. And if The Cure is allowed to be on there, you know, according to the people who made the film, then I don't see any reason why this shouldn't be. And I think I also put it on there because I really
ilk of the
like
track
it.
fits perfectly, but you'd have to have a scene where he'd like go to a gallery and have free wine, and him and his friends would be doing coke in the toilet while they're viewing a Bisquat or a Keith Haring exhibition or something.
They do that, so you know it's so this fits that really well. And I and the other thing is, again, I put this in because it's of the type of music from the 80s that I really enjoy, and I think it's a great track. It's not their best track; their best album's 91, I think, but. Again, with Björk, there's a really interesting story. Again, like that you could tell at dinner parties how she joined a music school at the age of 6 and was discovered by an Icelandic radio station at a school talent show and was made to release an album of essentially Icelandic nursery rhymes when she was 11. And when she was 12, she joined a punk band. And I just need to find this out because I don't want to get this wrong because it's quite rude. Yeah. Because the name of her first band, the translation of the name of her first band is quite explicit. So I don't want to get this wrong. So here we go. It's called the literal translation of her. Her first band was called Spit and Snot. Then she joined a jazz fusion band, and then she joined another group whose literal translation is Cork the Bitch's Ass. Is the name of it. And they're called Tappy Tickeras is the Icelandic name, and they're absolutely fantastic. Like she's like 14, appearing on Icelandic TV, singing in this punk band, and it's like, so the story behind her is fantastic, which it would tell. So when he talks about maturing on later works, I mean, this is the extreme of that, and it's just. You know, I think the Sugar Cubes are a fantastic band, and I think they're very influential. Their 91 album could have been released in the early 2000s and they'd have got away with it because they were very ahead of their time. I think I think this deserves its place on the list because it fits in with the other stuff from the soundtrack.
Would Patrick Bateman listen to it though?
Yeah, I think he would.
The Bjork Killer is an incredible story. There was a very prolific, bizarre person which lived in America at the time, which was obsessed with Bjork and killed himself massively by blowing his head onto a canvas because his love of Bjork was so
I've seen that
visceral. And if you look it up on YouTube, he's called the Bjork Stalker.
Yeah, he sent her a bomb in the post and it was intercepted. I've seen a true crime documentary.
She is the female Bowie.
I agree with that.
Throughout her entire career, she's consistently released, no matter what band she's been in or anything like this, I think she's consistently released.
But I second you on the fact that it's got a serial killer connection. On top of the fact that it fits anyway.
The vibe of this particular track's really interesting because it's called Birthday, but it's quite a dark track in a lot of ways. Although I should also point out that I think the Sugar Cubes are probably the blueprint for the pop band Aqua in a lot of ways, with the sort of spoken male vocal and the female singing. And I hate that that's a thing.
I now have a horrible suspicion that if Bjork wasn't in that band, you probably wouldn't like them then.
That's probably true because her vocals are amazing.
Well, it's kind of like having Kate Bush in Aqua.
Hearing either Kate Bush or Björk do a cover of Turn Back Time by Aqua. That's
Or Dr. Jones.
IBIU, IBIA.
Or We're Going to Ibiza.
That's
the Venga Boys. That's
Same
not
shit.
Aqua.
It's same shit.
Barbie Girl is Aqua.
they're from the Netherlands. Let's travel around the world some more and discuss another band from far shores. These are the rock behemoths that were In Excess. With one of Martyn's choices for the evening, it is New Sensation.
It's not even the best track on that album.
Doesn't matter, I agree. Let's move on.
My notes here were New Sensation In Excess, which personally I think is an incredible song. And
yeah, it's amazing.
Have such a massive place in my heart. I think In Excess, one of the greatest kind of, rock, pop, funk bands ever.
Best Australian band of all time?
No.
No
way.
AC/DC.
Come on, Tame
Everyone knows
Impala.
that.
AC/DC.
Australian.
I would take In Excess over AC/DC.
The Chats.
Yeah, the chats are the best. Everyone knows that.
In Excess, my obsession with In Excess is like there's no boundaries to it. I fucking adore this band.
Yeah, he's fucking sick. You need to calm that down.
Reel yourself in, yeah.
They're incredible. Like Michael Hutchence was one of the greatest frontmen of all time, in my opinion. But anyway, New Sensation, In Excess. My notes said getting ready to go out. So this is what would happen with Patrick Bateman. He would listen to In Excess. He definitely would. He would like it because he would like the edgy kind of, new wave. He would basically be like in his shower, taking 3 hours to get ready, using all of his fucking like stuff that he buys, all like, top of the range cleaning products.
Put on a pre-moisturizer.
I can't name any.
A bit of Brute and Old Spice.
Yeah. He'd be having a shower and then he'd do his crunches for a bit and then he'd put on his Louis Vuitton suit and he'd be heading out the door. New Sensation would be his soundtrack to a night out. He'd have a date with Courtney and he'd be like, he's got a reservation at Dorsia. He's fucking living his best life. New Sensation would be his soundtrack to that funk guitar. He'd love it. He'd be like fucking into it. And he would relate to Michael Hutchence, who is a extremely sexually driven man, as Patrick Bateman is. Michael Hutchence was extremely good looking and stylish, just like Patrick Bateman.
With In Excess, like, it is the Michael Hutchence show, or it certainly was.
Mm-hmm.
The problem for me is that of the singles from this album, this is the fourth best of the singles.
Almost chose Need You Tonight, but that was a bit too obvious, kind of like sexual. Where I came from it was like kind of, he didn't really need to feel sexual because he's always sexual. So I chose a song where it was specific to what he needed. And I think Patrick Bateman chooses his songs for what he needs at that moment. So when he's getting ready to go out, he wouldn't choose I Need You Tonight because he doesn't need that to make him feel sexual. He'd need a song to make him feel fucking like, oh, look at me, I'm fucking cool.
I think the problem for me is I find this track boring.
Oh, go away, Tom. You're banned.
Whereas I find Never Tear Us Apart and Mystify off the same album actually not boring.
I'm a little with Tom on this. I just don't think the chorus is strong enough.
New Sensation is a fucking undeniable banger and it needs to go on the list.
No.
It's okay.
It would be a yes from me.
There are In Excess tracks that could be called undeniable bangers, but unfortunately for me, this is not.
Oh, but it is. Just listen to it, man. You haven't listened to it, obviously.
I did!
Just listen to it, man.
That guitar. That's all you need. That's your problem, man, not mine.
Modern day music criticism. If you don't like it, just listen to it, man.
Just listen to it, man.
Well, if
New
you're listening to this
Sensation.
podcast and we've mentioned a song that you don't like, all you need to do is just listen to it, man.
And if you don't like it, then just listen harder. You'll get it.
Listen again.
Listen harder.
New Sensation. I love it. Mine loves it. Some people are not too keen on it. This next song, I think, is an undeniable banger. It's "Take on Me" by Aha.
Oh yeah.
How can you
Yeah,
not
see,
like
I'm with
that
you.
song?
Fuck this
Me
song.
and I say no.
If you don't like that song, just listen to it, man.
I think it's brilliant.
It's incredible. The music video is perhaps the greatest music video of all time. The thing about Aha is Martyn is a phenomenal vocalist. If you listen to the 2017 MTV Unplugged, it's possibly the best of MTV Unplugged by anyone.
Did you ever hear the live album they did, How Can I Sleep with Your Voice in My Head?
I don't think I have.
Weird, like I haven't listened to the Aha live album.
Came out at the same time as they released the album Analog.
Oh, it's about 2005.
Yeah, and they do like a 15-minute version of The Living Daylights with like a ska and a reggae version and stuff in there. They're
Just
actually,
in case the original version wasn't shit enough.
I have a feeling you don't like the song, Dave.
this is a strong song, and I would put it in undeniable banger. It's sung well. It definitely fits the Bateman brief.
I didn't like the ska version. I didn't like the falsetto version. I didn't like the new metal version. And I don't like the version that we're talking about now. Apart from that...
I feel really, in a lot of ways, I feel really sorry for a-ha because they've ended up in the same position as Toto, where they're decent bands who've released one single that's gone stratospheric and the rest of their discography gets
Toto,
forgotten.
incredible. Hold the Line, Rosanna, other such credible hits.
A lot of the stuff that a-ha released, particularly in the 1990s, is
Was
very
shit.
it's very much the blueprint for bands like Elbow.
How on earth do you get from a-ha to Elbow?
We're not going to get in the argument. What I want to know is, would Patrick Bateman like Take On Me?
Yes.
Would, because he has no taste.
Yes, 100%.
He has no taste in music, and he would love Take On Me.
Interesting side note that a-ha's fifth album, 3 albums after this, was recorded in Prince's Paisley Park studio.
I'm sorry, Tom. I want to delve more into this. As a person who only thought a-ha had one song and never released anything ever, how do you know so much about a-ha?
When I was at university, we were in halls of residence, and there was a thing where if you installed an old version of iTunes, you could share your entire back catalogues you could share your entire discography with everyone else on the same network. So we used to just share stuff, and one of the guys actually had like 2 or 3 a-ha albums. It was a Swedish exchange
It
student.
must have been. There it
And
is.
I downloaded them and listened to them and thought they were pretty good. Remember that in 2005 I was being a music journalist and a-ha released Analog and I had to review it, and I was surprised at how good it was. It's actually a really fucking good album.
Next up is a band that we've already discussed. This is Dave's choice from Tango in the Night. It's Big Love by Fleetwood Mac. Yeah, it's certainly a song that Bateman would love.
He would totally love it.
And also the real question is, do we go with my choice or Thomas's choice?
It's got to be everywhere.
It depends, because if we're talking Big Love, there is an acoustic version from their 1997 live album, which features just Lindsey Buckingham playing it on an acoustic guitar, and it is one of the most otherworldly performances. It's like he's possessed by the spirit of music and performs this amazing piece on his own.
Lindsey Buckingham's guitar playing on it is just absolutely intense. Lindsey Buckingham is just fucking incredible.
And I think a lot of the production on this particular version of the song, it loses that impact. But for what Patrick Bateman would have wanted in terms of watered down musical intricacy, and delivered on a bigger level, given a more oomph in terms of its production values to be presented to a more commercial audience, yeah, this has got that in spades.
Absolutely agreed, 100%. I think it's an amazing song. It's incredible in every fucking sense of the word. It's a work of genius. But then it's Fleetwood Mac, isn't it? You know, they just got better and better. If Bateman was going to collect a discography of any band, it probably would have been Fleetwood Mac.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As we were saying earlier, they've got such a fascinating story with them all getting together and breaking up around rumours, and then Lindsey Buckingham becoming an obsessed studio expert for Tusk and basically building that all on his own, going completely workaholic on that. Bateman would also kind of really buy into what they were experiencing around that time.
He would really like their work ethic, wouldn't he? He'd be like, these guys are working hard, you know, and he'd be like really into that.
A goddamn bunch of patriots.
Yeah, he wouldn't be that interested in artistically how they're working, but more commercially. He'd be like, you know, he would enjoy the fact that these were guys that have already made it and were still being top of their game.
I mean, we're just trying to go ground. I mean, they're the most Bateman band not to have been on the soundtrack, aren't they? It's what we said earlier. It really is true.
Al, that is probably the coolest thing you've said all night.
I think that's because you said that about an hour ago.
I think you've hit the nail on the head there. Next up is one of my choices. It is a song that I imagine everyone will love, but I'm not entirely sure now. This song is The Waterboys, and it is the joy,
The Waterboys.
the joy that is the whole of the moon, which some people say may have been written about Prince. So take your drink there.
Tell me more about that. I'm a big Waterboys fan.
So the subject of the song. So if you're not familiar with the song, if you're listening along, pause it, listen to the song.
We saw the whole of...
Oh, what a song.
It's a really uplifting song. And it's sung from the perspective of somebody who only sees the ordinary in things versus the person they aspire to be, seeing the whole of the moon. They see the bigger picture. They see the fantastical elements of life.
I think we can all get on board with that, can't we?
And so for many years, the question was asked, is the song about Prince? Because he was a big influence for the band. They did actually say in an interview that it's not about Prince and that it's not actually about...
I did not know that. Was Prince an influence on the Waterboys? Yeah. That's fucking amazing. Wow. It's blown my mind.
They said in an interview that it's not actually... They didn't write it for any individual. However, retrospectively, that they said that they wish they had written it about Prince because it fits perfectly in that he was somebody who saw things differently from other songwriters at the time. So you could describe something as mundane. He would see it as the whole of the moon.
The whole of the moon, yeah.
To bring it back around to Patrick Bateman, I think he would identify with certainly only being able to see the logic and he can't understand these abstract concepts of beauty and emotion and things like that. So he would therefore be listening to it, identifying with the narrator of the song as I see this. There are people out there who see that. He wouldn't necessarily aspire to be that person, but he'd certainly see that there are different ways of looking at things and he's incapable of seeing the beauty in life.
I like that, Dan. That was nice.
I think he'd enjoy the track because it fits. And I'm still gutted that I totally forgot about World Party, which is Carl Wallinger, who was one of the members of the Waterboys when they made Whole of the Moon, left and released a solo album in 1986.
Carl Wallinger's
with the
a
track
genius.
Ship of Fools. Yeah, with World Party is fantastic. So we'd Put the Message in the Jars in 1990, isn't it? But it's fantastic. So, I love the Waterboys and I love World Party as well. And they're two of my piano teacher's favourite bands after The Cure. So, great track. I think Bateman would have loved it. I agree with him on this. It's great. I'm going to call it now. I'd actually say undeniable banger for Whole of the Moon.
Do you know what? I agree. Tom, I'm absolutely backing you on this. Whole of the Moon by the Waterboys is an undeniable banger.
I'd never heard the song before. And
fuck, you've never heard it? Yes, you have. I
might have done in subconsciously. I did really like it though. It's a very good song.
Especially with the fact that it's got out of nowhere a saxophone solo as well, which you're not expecting. There is an undertone of darkness in the song as well. There's that messy violin at the end.
Think about the Waterboys. The Waterboys are one of those bands that were kind of like imagine like a bunch of fishermen, trawlermen. They formed a band and they're really good at what they were doing. They've got that vibe about them. They're very coastal band. They're very much like about the ocean and stuff. A lot of their songs are about like the sea. They did a song called
they're
The
called
Sea.
the Waterboys.
They're also like an interesting fact. Their music gets used a lot on like surfing videos, because they're so like in tune with like the coast and the ocean and stuff.
It's got a big sound and it creates that impression of the vastness of the ocean as well.
It's also very Celtic sound as well. They've got a big Celtic thing going on. They use a lot of Celtic instruments like bagpipes, for instance, in a lot of their songs. They're a fucking amazing band. And I think, it would probably be Patrick Bateman trying to get in touch with his nature side. It's
also that right level of rock for him, isn't it, as well? It's just pop rock, and there's nothing to say, oh, that's a bit off. Like there's a reason why we're all saying maybe undeniable banger, because there's just very little to not like about it, really, isn't it?
No, exactly. It is an undeniable banger. And for me, it has a lot of nostalgic value, because my first ever job when I left school was I was a marine engineer, and I was working in a dockyard. And whenever I was walking through, the big sheds, I'd hear this song banging out, and it would always be really reminiscent of where I was working. I was working on trawlers, and working on like fishing vessels, and like, you know, I knew that like the boats that I was working on, there was these guys out at sea all the time, and this song, you know, just kind of really fit in with that. It's an undeniable banger, and yeah, I think Patrick Bateman would dig it. He'd be like kind of, you know, thinking he'd use it as a kind of a kind of badge. You go, oh yeah, he'd probably look at his family tree and find out that, like, you know, a couple of grandfathers ago were Irish or something, you know, and go, oh yeah, they were fishermen from, you know, back in the fucking early 1900s.
Hop Bateman in the 1500s. Incredible tournament.
He'd use it as leverage, you know what I mean?
Dave, the question now is the Waterboys Whole of the Moon an undeniable banger?
Is it hinging on my vote?
When it comes to undeniable banger, if you're leaning either way, always go with the no, because it's a very select list.
Just have a listen to it, man.
Next up is one of your picks, Martyn, and it is Duran Duran's classic late 80s banger.
No.
Notorious.
My notes said this would be what he would listen to on the way into his office or on the way into a nightclub, where he's like kind of
Big time.
He wants to feel cool and he wants to feel funky, and he's like kind of like, oh, you know, I've got my best suit on, I'm looking cool and everything. Yeah, he would totally enjoy this.
There's nothing wrong with that.
No, and Duran Duran, let's not forget, they were the kings of hedonism back in their day. They turned up on a Saturday morning children's TV, coked up off their fucking head. Duran Duran were one of those bands that, if Patrick Bateman could be a member of any band of his choosing, he would choose to be in Duran Duran. You know what I mean? It was all about the look, the style, you know.
Great guys.
All of that, yeah. I think that this is totally a Bateman band, because it's just what he wanted to be. He wanted to be that rock star, but in a nice suit.
Yeah, Duran Duran were just all about looking cool.
Exactly.
It's a byproduct of their success that they actually made some banging music.
I'd agree they made some banging music, but I don't think they made any banging music after 83.
Oh, come on.
Like Notorious, I just find it gets boring because it doesn't really do anything other than its one hook.
That's what Patrick Bateman is.
I'm not saying
you've got to remember, I've chosen all of my choices have been purely from Patrick Bateman's point of view.
Oh yeah, I can see this totally as a Bateman track, but it doesn't work for me at all.
I've got to say, it's not my favourite Duran Duran song.
Works for me and Bateman, as far as I'm concerned.
If I'm going to talk about Duran Duran, I'm talking like Hungry Like the Wolf and Girls on Fire.
All tracks. Planet Earth. Ooh.
From Bateman's point of view, he's like, that stuff was a little bit too much for him. This is perfect for him because it literally is his comfort zone. It's just straightforward. It's got Nile Rodgers on it as well.
It's a little bit too artsy for my taste.
It's okay. It just sounds like 30 other songs.
There's no way I can let the opportunity to discuss this song pass without mentioning John Taylor's bass line.
Yes, yeah. John Taylor is one of the most underrated bass players of all time. He's a massive, massive influence on Blur. Alex Turner apparently based most of his bass lines on John Taylor. Apparently, I was watching an interview with Graham Coxon, and he was like, Alex was he kept doing all these John Taylor bass lines, and like, he is absolutely underrated. He's incredible, absolutely incredible.
His classic slap bass, it's just got funk all over it.
Interestingly, a lot of it's not particularly slapped. He plays with a plectrum quite a lot, but he's a great bass player. He's really underrated. My only problem with him was that early on in my bass playing career, he is the bass player who endorses all the cheap crap PV basses. I have a little bit of a problem with that. Apart from that, great bass player. I don't think he actually plays a cheapy 60 quid PV bass, but he puts his name on other people's cheap 60 quid PV
and
basses.
Why not?
Why make everybody else sound good when you can sound the best?
Exactly.
Yeah, well, absolutely.
We'll move on. The next song is one of Dave's picks. Casual listeners to music may recognise this from about the early 2000s as a dance track called Call On Me which you may or may not remember for its music video. Those of you familiar with the music video will certainly remember it.
I'm off for a wank.
You're not doing it already? I'm doing it during.
The song that we think Patrick Bateman would love is Valerie, the sample on which the song Call On Me is based. This is the remix, so not the original version. He re-released a remix of it in 87, and this is Steve Winwood, one of his most commercial tracks. He'd been a figure in the blues rock scene for a number of years. He even featured on Electric Ladyland's.
Yeah, he played with Hendrix, man.
Yeah, Voodoo Child. And this was kind of his 80s commercial periods, which would have been right up Patrick Bateman's alley in terms of having a backstory to this legendary musician who then breaks out and has a successful adult contemporary pop career. And yeah, this epitomises that kind of 80s synth sound as well. The synth refrain on is iconic, I guess. Yeah, it's a fantastic song. Dave, talk us through why this is on the list.
Well, yeah, it's originally a Wentworth jam, but it's a sample from obviously Eric Pritchard's Call On Me dance video, which is why a lot of people would know it. But it also references a film called Perfect, which is a Jamie Lee Curtis and John Travolta aerobics type situational.
A lot of leotards involved in this song, by the sound of it.
Yeah, it is like majorly sexual. So there's a lot of people in really short shorts and a lot of people in like high vaginal cutting fucking leotards.
God, those leotards are hot.
Grinding the absolute fuck out the fresh air. So it's a workout vid. It's sexually explicit. That's a take on Bateman. It's commercially viable. That's a take on Bateman. It's in the future commercially sampleable. That's a take. I just think it's probably the most fast foody sort of commercial bullshitty song we've got.
What I'll say about Valerie by Steve Winwood, I know the original very well. Put aside the production, the way the song is written, it's like kind of, it's just got really, really interesting chord progressions in it. I love the song. The original. I love the original to bits. And I think you're right in the sense that Bateman would love it, in the sense I don't know what the original song's about. Probably, a girl that he lost once as a kid.
Unfortunately, the artist, Steve, who has produced lots of good kind of pop songs, and usually is like normally talking about, because he does singles with his latter-day partner, more about like how he's met a really strong, capable woman who's like musically adept and like adept as an adult. And that is a very unpopular topic in modern day music, how you've met a strong woman, how you get along really well. But in this particular context, this song is great with just how fast foody it is.
I think it's pretty Bateman. The good thing is, a lot of these tracks, you can just copy and paste the explanation why we chose it. He has a very, very select criteria, and all you got to do is pick songs in it, and this is very much in it.
I also enjoy this song.
I think it's pretty good.
It's an enjoyable song, definitely. Next up top is one of yours. This is The Sisters of Mercy, and this is Dominion / Mother Russia, as it's known on the album.
Oh, yeah, on the album, the single's just Dominion. Mother Russia's just the same thing with slightly different lyrics, yeah. So I picked this song because, the nightclub scene at the beginning of the film. Well, you could put this track in there.
Temple love.
Yeah.
On there, and it would work. I mean,
he doesn't want that track there. He wants this track.
I like this track better. Actually, to be fair, I think the one playing in the night, I actually like the track that they're playing in that nightclub scene early on.
Isn't it a Bizarre Love Triangle by New Order?
Yeah, it is. So I like that track probably better than this one. In terms of having to put something else in, this is the obvious replacement. It's a classic track. It fits the criteria. It's a classic track. It's got an undercurrent of darkness. It's slightly rocky. What else is there to say? Oh, the guitar line, I'm sure, has been ripped off by hundreds of people ever since.
Oh, yeah, it has been. Has been ripped off loads. I think it's pretty good.
It's not a song I was overly familiar with. I have heard it before, but in this context, it definitely fits. I downloaded the album, which is called Drownland, which I will be checking out because it's got this kind of post-punk Echo and the Bunnymen vibe, which I'm kind of digging at the moment. I should mention that Aha, who Dave didn't take very kindly to earlier, did an incredible acoustic cover of Killing Moon with Ian McCulloch on co-lead vocals. And that is incredible. If you have go and check that out, as well as the songs that we're telling you about tonight. But yeah, Sisters of Mercy, very much that kind of Echo and the Bunnymen post-punk aesthetic from the era. And yeah, you're right. The darkness that underpins the song would fit very nicely into a dark club scene because it's up tempo and it's just dingy enough to I can see it being played in clubs at the time, and it's just edgy enough to draw in someone who's got a mindset similar to Bateman. You get lost in the darkness between the notes in this song, and I think that's why it's such a good choice. I think it's a great choice for the playlist. Next on the list is a bit of an odd choice. This one, I didn't see this one coming. It's a song I was only vaguely familiar with. It's classic 70s rock group turned 80s rock pop fodder. It is Chicago with Will You Still Love Me, which before I heard it, I thought was going to be a cover of Will You Still Love Me, the classic Shirelle song. But this isn't that. It's a completely different song. It's got a very Broadway musical sound to it. It's got big chords, big choruses, which Bateman would have been all over like a rash. And it sounds like it could be a theatre production with its melodrama. Chicago, they've done a couple of songs that I really like. Hard to Say I'm Sorry, and I do have a soft spot for If You Leave Me Now. But other than that, I think they're very much a middling rock band by numbers, and I think they were just as guilty of this in the 80s with the new gated drums sound that this song has. They changed their sound to stay current. They were always chasing the trends in the 70s, and they continued to do so in the 80s. Stayed with it with this song. It's nothing new to their back catalogue, but Bateman would have lapped it up.
It's that perfect level of really successful yet really unoriginal and not pushing the boat out in any direction possible.
Yeah, I completely concur with that.
The thing with Chicago that's interesting is that their 70s stuff is what you remember them for. But it's a completely different vocalist guitarist because the lead vocalist guitarist in the 70s accidentally shot himself.
Wow.
So yeah, they went on this completely different direction. This track isn't good, but at the same time I can't hate it because it's trying to do so many things, and I'm like, there's moments in it where because it, like, about halfway through, they go through this, like, loads of different changes where it does loads of different bits, and a couple of them are like, oh, this is good, can you stick with this? No,
you know what it is, Tom, is that they're a diet version of prog rock.
Yeah, absolutely, and
it's prog rock without any sugar.
Yeah, absolutely, and I can get behind that because I'm like, okay, you're changing it up, you're not repeating anything, I can sort of deal with that. Like, I don't love it, I'm not going to go and buy anything they've done, but on the other hand, I find this track really difficult to hate.
Yeah. I think a lot of Peter Cetera's solo stuff is similar. You never meet a Peter Cetera fan. You got a lot of people that will love, like, If You Leave Me Now, and he did some solo hits in the 80s as well. He was always in, like, movie soundtracks, and he's got an iconic voice. But nobody ever says, oh, yeah, I listen to a lot of Peter Cetera.
A bit like Soundgarden, yeah.
Yeah.
Fuck off, Al. Fuck off.
Sorry, I had to do it.
Into our final two tracks for the evening. The penultimate track for this evening is my last pick of the evening. This is a band that I really, really enjoy, perhaps for different reasons than Patrick Bateman would. It is level 42, and the single I've gone for is Lessons in Love. The reason I picked Lessons in Love is simply because I think that Patrick Bateman the lyrical themes of trying lots of different things, but always failing, and owing it up to being another lesson, is something that I think would resonate with Patrick Bateman, on the idea that he's tried to feel human emotion before and failed, so he recognises the fact that he's always going to fail ultimately at doing it. I think potentially I'm looking into it far too deep.
I think if you explain it like that, it kind of makes sense, but on just my gut feeling of when I listen to it, it just doesn't feel Bateman-y. You see, just the tone of the song's just... I know it's kind of similar to a lot of the other songs we've had, but it's just a little too positive sounding.
Mark King, the bassist and vocalist for Level 42, is a mammoth of a musician. He's played with Nile Rodgers, he's played with Prince, he's played with lots of different big acts, and is highlighted as one of the best bassists in 80s music. They originated as a jazz fusion, jazz pop band in the vein of something like Steely Dan. And they became a bit more commercial in 1987 with this album. But there are a number of songs that are more commercially successful, and this is one of them. But I think perhaps there's still that underpinning of it being a bit too jazzy for his tastes. That I can understand that.
I feel like Guy in the In-Betweeners when they're trying on this is too jazzy. Well, I didn't think it was jazzy. It felt too... Well, I guess funky is the wrong word for it. And I guess whatever I was feeling, it's too jazzy. It just feels...
It's a bit too clever.
Yeah, let's go with that. Why not?
Yeah, it probably is, yet it's one of their least clever songs.
Yeah, I mean, maybe the Chinese way, but I think that was out of the time period. This song, I think, was their most commercial song around the period. So I think he would most likely to listen to this, but I still think it may be... of the tracks I've selected, I think it was probably the biggest stretch for him to listen to, because it's the most artistic.
It's the one that Bateman would love. He would talk about Mark King's bass on it forever. He'd go, "Oh, listen to Mark King's bass on this," and he would love it. 'Cause it's really
I think the bass is quite understated for Mark King.
Yeah, it is. It sounds like a synth bass as well.
It really is.
Yeah, it does.
That's why Bateman would love it, is because like all of the good things that are about Level 42, who I consider a great band. I love Mark King. I fucking love Level 42 to bits. He would choose the song that least represented their fucking musicality. He'd be like, this was their greatest fucking song ever. And it's the one that goes like, well, there's about as little Mark King in there as you could possibly get.
He's the sort of person who'd like to bang on about the subtlety of their, of their genius, so he'd be like, in previous songs it had been too out there, but I think you subtly fit in nicely here. Do you mean like, that's the sort of thing he would say? Like,
I think we're slowly learning on tonight's episode that Patrick Bateman would be an excellent guest on the podcast.
You know more than me.
He would be great, wouldn't he?
So we'll move on to the final track for the evening, and I know Dave has been itching to talk about this one. So have I. It's Martyn's pick, though, ultimately. We allowed you to have it, Martyn. It's Serious by Donna Allen, which is very much a almost like early New Jack Swing from 1986. It almost feels like a Tesco value I Feel For You by Shaka Khan, because it's got that spoken word interlude and the big powerful vocals.
You sold it on the river already.
But it comes together,
Dave's fond of this song,
and its power is in the snare drum, and that snare drum is so hard hitting that you can forgive the lack of polish on the song compared to other contemporary hits. And it is a phenomenal tune that I've listened to over and over again, and I've introduced you to it, Dave, and Martyn.
Yes.
And it's been on one of the most regularly played songs of the last 12 months for me.
It is a sample.
I think the sample that people will recognise it from is it formed the basis of Strike's You Sure Do. That, baby, I don't know what I should do. You sure make me feel like loving you. Yeah, you'll recognise that bit. That's what's so good about this song. The harmonies on that that bit of the song, and the snare, the pounding snare all the way through. Undeniable banger in my estimations.
Yeah, mine too.
It's not as polished as other hits of the era, as I mentioned, but it's so good. The vocal quality that she delivers, she's an underrated singer. I don't really know anything else that she did. This is a kind of a one-hit wonder, I think. But it's a fantastic song. Dave, I'm going to let you talk about it now.
This song is been ripped off multiple times by different artists, and it's based upon a scene which is talking about kind of like a subculture which was predominantly ethnic black and ethnic Hispanic communities which were transsexual, basically, and they had a competitive environment which would be based upon the fashion magazines. That's what they called it, Vogue. So like the breakdancing scene of the kind of late 80s, these people basically had like a competitive fashion element and dance element, which then led on to the dance scene, which was in the late 80s. And Madonna kind of ripped it off of the Vogue kind of era.
It's pronounced Vogue.
Sorry, Al, how silly of me.
So I wanted to get a crap joke in the first time you said it, but I got a second chance. Sorry.
But this is the crowning element of it. It's ultimate female sass. It's ultimate driving 80s beats. It's obviously been sampled in a really heavy hitting house track of the late era because it was a gay anthem in the late 80s, basically, and just as we've discussed, the harmonies and the bass. If you don't feel anything when that fucking chorus kicks in, then there's really no point in you carrying on to listen to music because
Well,
you just don't get it.
best burn my CDs.
There's no point. There's no point. If you are then only going to talk about the nuances of chord progression and time signatures, then I don't want to talk to you anymore.
That was a very direct dig, Dave, because I found everything you said about a track earlier in this episode about being quite forgettable is how I feel about this track. I've listened to it about 7 or 8 times because I've tried to get into it. And every time I've listened to it, about 15 minutes later, I can barely remember anything other than that little hook. So I just find it dull. Like, it doesn't really do anything. The spoken word bit is painfully bad. Like, yeah, it's got a nice chorus and it's
but it's proto-rap.
Oh, this was a bit late to the game, I think, because...
Yeah, rap existed already by that point. Sugar Hill Gang's first record was first hit was 1979.
King Tim Hill was also 1979.
But we can agree that when it came out, it was relatively new, so...
Right, but you sticking around listening to Donna Allen thinking, I can't wait till the rap kicks in.
No, it's not the best bit.
Do you know what, Dave? I'm going to absolutely be on your side on this whole thing. I listened to it probably like about over 20 times in a row.
Really?
On the way home, just fucking banging this tune. I just left it on repeat. I was just like, I want to hear this song over.
All
and
that
over
delivery of that chorus.
Yeah, the chorus, when that kicks in, like, and it's really cool. Like, you know, the whole song is cool, but that chorus, when it kicks in, is like, and the synth pads in it are so beautiful. Like, it is a classic tune.
It's very Jam and Lewis. It's not Jam and Lewis, but it sounds like what they were doing in the mid to late 80s with Janet Jackson. For those of you that listen to the podcast and pause when we mention a song, because I know people do that, you may well have come across the video on YouTube. Please disassociate the video from the song, because the video is actually one of the most strange... Why have they done that videos? But all 80s videos are like that. They're suddenly then going out into a basketball court and just posing, and they're wearing the most random assortment of clothes.
Yeah, I will be honest, I watched the video because I listened to the extended version of the track because that's all that's on Spotify, and I find it really dull. And then I saw that the video was only 4 minutes and I thought, oh, maybe I'll enjoy the track more in a shorter form. And
the shorter version's better.
yeah, but then I had to see the video, and my eyes will never recover.
Ultimately, would Patrick Bateman like this tune?
Oh, absolutely. He'd love it.
I don't know if it seems Bateman-y.
In the film, they don't really make a big deal of the Whitney Houston stuff, but I know it does in the book.
Yeah, that was for legal reasons. So, Whitney Houston wouldn't allow her songs in the movie.
Based on the book, yes. Based on the film, it probably doesn't fit. So for me, who's only seen the film, haven't read the book, it doesn't fit.
If Patrick Bateman was part of our podcast, he'd be like, that's an undeniable banger.
It's from the same family tree as So Emotional by Whitney Houston. So yeah, I think he would really like this song. I really love this song. Yeah, that's been our 25 songs that we think Patrick Bateman would love.
And the 2 other ones that Tom picked.
Yeah. We'll be back with the next episode in order to get you hyped up for the next episode. Shall we pick what the topic's going to be for next month?
Oh, we could do the podcast sex mix.
So next month, you've heard it here first, the Cacophony Sessions makes a sex tape. Sorry, mixtape.
That's for the Patreons, the sex tape.
Oh dear.
I like the fact that Tom is obviously
Tom's going to
gonna
love
choose-
it. It's
Tom's the only person who wanks in 9:10.
You don't wank in a time signature because you don't do
If you want us to continue this conversation for 2 more hours, tune into the next episode of the Cacophony Sessions where we get sexy. We now have a Twitter account, so now follow us at CAC Sessions Pod on Twitter. So you don't have to follow me personally if you don't like me. You can pretend that it's not me that's doing all the replies. It's one of the other guys, which it isn't, but it will still be me, but it's under a different name. So you still got your street cred. We also have the blog, which we're being more active with. As we said, the list of undeniable bangers will be updated after this episode as well. We'll keep coming with more episodes. Go back and listen to the previous ones. Fill yourself in on some of the back episodes. A good place to start is probably episode 3. That's when the quality starts to get a little bit better. But yeah, stay with us. And we have one thing to ask of you in return, and that is that you do stay funky.
And tit pics.
I'm off to return some videotapes, guys, so see you later. Bye.
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 I fucking love you guys.
Bye, I love you guys. Bye, bye, bye.